editor for a tiny publishing company that then got bought out by another tiny publishing company, and they made me senior editor of that too. The interesting thing is those two publishing companies were called Eternal Press and Damnation Books. So I definitely was working for Eternal Damnation.
Well, that happens.
Joe, you haven't finished filling in your intro.
What?
The top bit.
We need the funnies.
Oh my gosh.
I just panicked and I thought I'd been logged out of Discord.
Oh, there we go.
But wait a minute, we're not using Discord.
Yeah, I do not have it booted up, so don't go over there looking for me right now. It takes my system about 5 minutes to turn it on. I don't know if that's good for everybody, but...
Yikes.
All right.
Okay, I got excellent connection, but it's just sitting there with a circle going round.
Yeah,
and round.
we are live on YouTube, according to my browser.
Oh,
who's doing that?
Me?
I shared a link to the show notes. If somebody wants to see the show notes, they can bring them up themselves.
Oh, you want me to stop doing that then?
Yeah, I mean, I know I'm the new guy, but
the only one that matters.
If nobody actually needs that in order to get through the show, then I don't see. All right, yeah, we are streaming it.
Well, you're hosting today, so we'll do it your way.
I don't understand why. Can somebody one more time verify that we're streaming?
We are live.
Okay.
I am showing live on YouTube myself right now.
All right, great. All right, well,
we're already a little late. Why don't we go ahead and start Audacity?
Hold on, I gotta share the link a couple of places.
I already did.
One other place.
Oh.
They asked for it. I'm providing it on the coder.
The coder.
Yeah.
Ask and you shall receive.
You bet.
Okay, once again, Tom, it's 3, 2, 1, record, and 25 seconds of silence with your mic open, and then 3, 2, 1, 0 for sync. We all say 0 at the same time, and after that, you close your mic unless you're using it. 10-4?
Got it. I do not have a way to close mic on Audacity. I can close it on the stream, though. Is that a problem?
Not really. Well, it'll be a problem for whoever edits later, but that's not a big deal.
Yeah.
I don't think it's something we can't overcome. The worst case scenario is we just get a little background noise from your end when somebody else is reading or whatever.
Yeah, which can be easily cut out if you're overlaying them and syncing them. Yeah.
Are we ready to go?
Go right ahead, Moss.
Okay. We got a 3, 2, 1, record. All right, guys, let's sink or swim. 3, 2, 1, 0.
0.
It's your show, Bill.
Welcome to mintCast, the podcast by the Linux Mint community for all users of Linux. This is 392. This is episode 392.5, recorded on Sunday, the 24th of July, 2022. Enjoying a much-deserved long weekend. I'm Bill.
It's still too dang hot for a third week in a row. I'm Joe.
Fighting off my cats, I'm Moss.
Returning from sabbatical, I'm Josh T.
And the guest, I'm Tom.
Oh, yeah, sorry. Yeah, we're joined by a special guest. A keen eye on the YouTube channel might notice that we've got Tom Murawski. Did I say that right?
It's Murawski. But everyone gets it wrong anyway, so it's okay.
Okay. Well, yeah, there's a lot of those names in Pennsylvania, I noticed when I go down there. Most of you might recognize him from his show Switch to Linux. He's here to help us dredge through this show today. We appreciate that. Again, welcome, Tom.
Well, thanks for having me.
First up in the news, Vanessa is almost here. XFCE flirts with Wayland. GNOME is touching up the touchscreen experience, and Star protects data on Brave browsers. In security and privacy, the RetBleed speculative exploit is more than just speculation, but the kernel team already have a fix, and Lightning framework flashes our way. Then in our wanderings, Bill is back from Pennsylvania again and again. Norbert polishes his laptop. Moss is doing the Makulu shift. Joe is working the mods. Josh T is fixing watches, and Tom is channeling.
And we hope Norbert makes it.
And we're going to have more from Tom in our innards section. And finally, of the feedback and a couple of suggestions.
You can tell that Norbert wrote that intro section there.
Yeah. It screams his creativity signature. Now for the news.
Okay, first up in the news, Linux Mint 21 Vanessa beta release. This is from Phoronix. In addition to the new Cinnamon 5.4 desktop being available and the new updated versions of many packages from upstream Ubuntu 2204 LTS, some of the other Linux Mint changes with this release include replacing Blueman with Blueberry for Bluetooth handling. I have high hopes on that. A new XApp thumbnails component for handling WebP, app image, EPUB, MP3, and RAW file types. A process monitor was added to report automated updates and system snapshots in the background. Artwork and styling improvements, and improvements to the XApps programs themselves. But yeah, the Blueberry is better. I mean, it's definitely still not great, but it's better than Blueman and offers more functionality. But I don't know if Bluetooth will ever work really well in Linux.
Are you guys using anything on Bluetooth on desktop Linux?
I don't have anything on Bluetooth.
Not for any long period of time.
This is supposedly a little more complex app, so I'm not sure if that's going to have an impact, with Linux Mint and kind of their ethos of being easy to use.
Well, you can go in and change some of the sleep settings, and that helps your devices not disconnect, and so then they don't have to reconnect, which is helpful. Considering that's where most of your Bluetooth devices fail, is when they go to sleep, wake back up, and try to reconnect to the Bluetooth on your computer.
Last week I was using a Bluetooth speaker from LG. I think it was like an X-Boom with Linux Mint 20. I think it was 20.3 or 20.2, and it had zero problems at all. I was actually shocked how easy it worked.
That's good.
That's good. I don't use Bluetooth.
I have a multitude of 60% keyboards, and they work great when I first connect, and they might even work through one disconnection and one reconnection. But usually second or third, it just won't connect, or it will partially connect, and then I'll press a button and it'll decide that I'm holding the key down and line after line of that same key.
So maybe a little bit more difficult in terms of interface, but more stability. It's kind of washes.
Well, as you may remember, Joe sent me some Bluetooth headsets a while back, and they work great on my phone, which technically is Linux, but not actually. And I just never seem to get them to work right and keep working on Mint or Linux of any kind. I try a lot of Linuxes, as you all know.
The only thing I use Bluetooth on, now that I think about it, is a Logitech, one of those trackball mice I use on my Omen upstairs. The thing about that is when you got to wake it back up, it takes a second. You got to wiggle the ball, and it doesn't respond right away, but after a second or so. Yeah, I got one of these down here with the
Oh, you got the Microsoft one? Oh no, the Logitech one.
This
This
got
this
the platform that.
Yeah, I have one of those. That's like $120 mouse,
Yeah,
and
it's not
this
cheap.
is like a $40 mouse from Jellycomb, and it. The only thing it doesn't have is the adjustable bottom, but I 3D printed one.
That's cool.
Yeah, I've got a Jellycomb on one of my computers, and
I love these
it
things.
works either Bluetooth or
Exactly.
Wi-Fi, and I usually just use it Wi-Fi.
Like this one has the 2.4 gigahertz module, which works great,
That's what
just
I
like
use.
any other module like that. But it can do Bluetooth. But
Yeah.
it's great for hooking, like using with an Android tablet or something. But it's just not something that I would want to trust to connect to a Linux machine.
I find the Jellycomb trackball is a little bit loose compared to a Logitech. Sometimes
It
does
is.
get away.
Especially as it ages, as it gets a little bit older, it loses that little bit of precision, and you have some trouble really dialing in the spots you're getting to. Okay, enough about mice.
Yeah, we didn't even talk about the article, just the Bluetooth.
We did. Well, that was the part of it that I found interesting. I mean,
To be fair, or well, to be clear, is this the back end and the front end being updated, or is this just another front end for the Blue Man?
well, yeah, Blue Man is gone. Well, Blue Man and Blueberry are different applications. I mean, Blueberry, as far as I know, is not a front end for Blue Man. It's its entire own thing.
So it's got its own system D services and everything that have to run, I assume.
Yeah.
Oh, moving on. What?
Well, I was going to say, Tom reviewed this already on his channel, but is there anything that struck you really that stood out other than the Bluetooth?
Yeah, I mean, the one thing that I have had problems with on Linux Mint in the past, particularly doing as much video and imagery that I do, is the thumbnails caching in, and for whatever reason, some of the systems work, some of them don't, and the new one just worked flawlessly, even on a VM, which was quite incredible.
Yeah, I remember seeing that on your video and just how fast it went. It was really impressive. It looks like a really nice upgrade there.
Yeah, and that was going from an external hard drive, passed through the machine into the VM, dropping video files onto the desktop, and it worked flawlessly.
Beautiful.
The one thing I'm worried about is whether Grub Customizer still works in Mint, because if it goes away because of the 2204 base, then it's going to be vanishing, and it's one of the more useful tools for
that can be fixed
for us multi-users, multi-booters.
That can be fixed. It's just, what are they doing? They're just getting rid of OS Prober, right? Or they're adding that line in the Grub config to disable OS Prober.
Totally deprecated all of Grub Customizer. They just went, bye-bye. We're not going to work on that library. Nobody is working on that library. We don't need it anymore.
I think somebody's going to keep that working somewhere. That's what I choose to believe, because that's like the one thing everybody uses.
Yeah, we're seeing more distros though coming out with syslinux instead. So, in some places we're starting to see a degradation of Grub. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I think one way or the other we'll be able to figure out a way to keep it going. Anyway, we ready to move on from that?
Do it.
Right on. XFCE's window manager sees Wayland port based on WL roots. This is from Phoronix. Developer Adlo announced to Wayland developers today the work on porting XFCE's XFWM4 window manager code to Wayland, and this new XFWay compositor, that's not what I would have thought they'd have chose to call it, is being brought up using the WL roots library that is becoming increasingly common among the smaller Wayland compositors. A WL roots based XFCE XFWM4 port is in the works and making good progress, but with known limitations. There are feature regressions compared to an alternative libweston-based port. Upstream XFCE 4.18 is eyeing Wayland application support, but a full transition of this lightweight GTK-based desktop will likely take a while. The XFCE wiki outlines these plans for trying to ensure XFCE applications at least run on Wayland nicely under, say, the Weston compositor, but not a complete Wayland port of XFCE in its entirety. That release engineering page notes, it is not clear yet which XFCE release will target a complete XFCE Wayland transition, or if such a transition will happen at all. Well, that's amazing that we're even talking about this, honestly.
Yeah, XFCE and Wayland.
Because it's not even a complete story on Plasma yet, and we're talking about it on XFCE. I was starting to worry about that, actually. We're not really worried, but I wanted XFCE to stay alive. I thought that would break the acronym for the name, actually, if it had Wayland support, but
WFCE.
Yeah, but that doesn't really roll off the tongue quite as well, I don't think.
Well, the other letters in the term have gone away too, because it's not based on the X file system or the common environment. So
yeah,
you can always
just rename the whole thing.
You can just go with Wayface.
I was just gonna say Crossface.
There you go.
Yeah, Wayface. Yeah, that's good.
Face off.
But yeah, that's, I mean, the fact that, we can get anything working in it at all is positive in my mind. I mean, gosh, they're not known for being completely up to date. They're known for having, I don't want to say a minimum viable product, but it is just the one desktop that you can, I've always called it kind of a lightweight GNOME, but it's I think it's a little bit more than that. It's ideal for somebody that wants the classic desktop paradigm that they got used to 20 years ago.
I'm wondering if we've heard anything from Martin Wimpress on whether they're bringing Wayland to Mate.
I can almost guarantee that, but of course I have no data to back that up. I think it's inevitable because they are switching from, I just thought of that. They're switching from Muffin to Mutter over there. I just heard, and I don't remember where I heard that from, but that was something they just announced recently. So that's no doubt going to make it more compatible with Wayland on the back end. But I would have, my money would have been more on Mate transitioning over to Wayland before XFCE.
Yeah, E has been on Wayland since version 20, or literally 0.20. But I know that Bodhi hasn't even done anything other than backporting, and they're not even thinking about Wayland at this time.
Well, X isn't going anywhere anytime soon, so it's not like we're just going to be left out in the cold in even the near future, because I think, Canonical is supporting some of their older versions of the Ubuntu proper for 10 years, and that means they have to maintain Xorg for those. So I don't think we have to really worry about whether or not these...
Yeah, X will get, phased out in the same way 32-bit got phased out. It just took forever, but eventually it happened.
It'll just become one of those things that still exists, but nobody's actually doing anything to innovate on it.
Well, X has been around since 8-bit, so I don't know if it'll ever get phased out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Moving on, Josh.
You'll have fun on Debian,
Exactly, yeah.
Okay. So we have GNOME Shell 43 and Mutter 43 alphas have been released. This is also from Phoronix. In gearing up for the GNOME 43 alpha release coming out soon, this weekend marked the release of the new alpha versions of GNOME Shell and Mutter. For the 43.alpha state, the GNOME Shell and Mutter changes aren't too great in terms of shiny new features, but there are a lot of fixes and other refinements. Some of the changes for the new GNOME Shell and Mutter alpha releases are outlined below. GNOME 43 Alpha brings improving GNOME Shell's high contrast CSS style sheet, showing of WireGuard connections in the VPN list, fixing on-screen keyboard gestures. Focus tracking has been fixed for the magnifier tool on Wayland. Mirroring GTK's API in GNOME Shell for a convenience property for icon-only buttons. Memory leak fixes and a variety of other fixes. More details on the GNOME 43 Alpha changes via this commit. GNOME Mutter 43 Alpha introduces direct scan-out handling improvements, removal of obsolete Wayland protocols, nightlight handling fixes, fixing initialization of privacy mode for supported displays, support for HDR and colorimetry, CTA-861 EDID extension blocks. Parsing the HDR extension block is important for the long-going quest of proper HDR support on the Linux desktop. Various crash fixes as well as memory leak fixes. More details on the GNOME Mutter 43 Alpha changes via this commit. The GNOME 43 Alpha release will be out soon, while the GNOME 43 Beta is coming in early August that will mark the UI and feature freeze along with the API/ABI freeze. The GNOME 43 release candidate, in turn, will come in early September, and the GNOME 43 stable release is expected to happen on 21 of September.
And everyone can always check show notes for links.
Yes, there was a lot there.
Any GNOME users?
No.
Only when I have to.
Only when I'm fixing somebody else's computer.
Norbert, where are you when we need you?
Yeah. No, I was using it on Arch on my Go on the Road laptop, but I couldn't take any more. And so I went back to XFCE. So there you go.
I think I used it on Fedora for a little while, but that was just like for the show.
I just
test it out.
I find it, well, I don't know. I find the attitude of some of their developers a little off-putting, and I don't know. They've got their own culture and their own way of doing things. And now, the other strange thing though is that when I put Linux on one of my kids' computers, and I give them, I don't know, like Mate or something, and they're, well, how do I do that? They're bringing it downstairs to me. Where do I find this? Where do I find that? I give them GNOME, and they get on with it just fine. You know, weeks go by, and I ask them, how you doing with that? Oh, yeah, it works great. So, yeah.
That's kind of a testament to what their vision is, you know, and a more touch-friendly style, you know, interface.
That must
more
be
familiar,
it, yeah.
I think. Sorry, Tom.
I guess it's like that one Mercedes-Benz that they released that had just a joystick to drive it.
Right.
Yeah, I was gonna say as I've talked to some of the younger viewers on my show, what I've learned is that older folks do not like GNOME, but the younger people really do because it matches the intuitive interface that they've grown up with on tablets and on phones, and so it makes sense that it is easier for them to understand, and that's one of the powers of Linux, where you can have a variety of different desktop environments to suit your needs.
Your older people tend to do better with either Cinnamon or XFCE or LXQT or something more XP like.
Correct.
Well, let's look at another side project. Star protects browser data on Brave. From the Brave.com website, researchers at Brave have developed Star, a system that allows users to participate in private data collection under cryptographic guarantees that their data will be readable only if other users have contributed the exact same values. Such systems are important for performing privacy protecting, web scale measurements of software, sometimes referred to as analytics or telemetry. Star's main goals are to provide strong privacy guarantees while still being usable and affordable for small to medium-sized companies. Existing systems are extremely expensive to deploy, making them unusable for all but the largest companies, require trusted third parties or special hardware, and/or require millions of users to achieve useful results. Star, by contrast, provides privacy guarantees similar to or better than existing systems while being practical and affordable for projects and organizations serving anywhere from dozens to millions of users. The Star system will be presented at the 2022 ACM Conference on Computer and Communications Security, CCS, in Los Angeles, and is being discussed for possible standardization in the IETF. Star is available in an open source Rust implementation and will be used to protect user privacy in many current and future Brave products.
Anybody use Brave?
Occasionally I do.
Yeah. And Tom, I think you touched on this too, and you compared it to Flock a little bit, right?
The way I was reading the initials, I've not had a chance to go through and read the whole research paper yet, but it sounded fairly similar. I still have concerns about this, and one of my big concerns is that it's going eventually. Right now, it's like opt-in only. Eventually, they're going to toggle that switch when nobody's expecting it, and everyone's data is going to be contributed, and all this data is going somewhere. And the question is, who has access to that somewhere? Is that secure, server secured? There's a lot of other questions, and I would just rather live in a world where we don't have to have all this, because I'm old enough to know that computers worked just as fine, if not better, certainly no worse, when we weren't collecting mass data on things and people did bug reports. Because right now we're just getting a dragnet of data under the auspices of improving the software. However, we're not really seeing that many improvements, but we are seeing data leaks. We're seeing inappropriate people accessing such data. And I think there's bigger concerns with this than what they're really reporting on the surface.
It's not hard to imagine that most of the improvements, as you say, is probably just stuff on the back end to improve their ability to collect the data and harvest it and put it together in a way that can turn a better profit for them. And that's my biggest problem with Brave has always been from the beginning that it's based on a Chromium code base, which I don't care if Chromium is open source or not. To make it work, you need Google's APIs and all that. So, you're still giving information to Google. And yeah, like you said, things can work just fine without that. Would you pay? Here's a question: would you pay for a browser that worked as well as Chrome did, but didn't harvest your data?
That's an interesting point, and I'd like to point out that Bad Voltage in their last episode.
Yeah, I was going to bring that up too.
Detail, yeah, they went in full on Brave and kind of their business model and how it just doesn't make sense right now. So I think a subscription might be a better option than doing the data collection.
I was going to ask either. I don't know if I would do a subscription because I don't like the whole monthly fees thing. But
No,
if
me
it was
neither.
like a lifetime pack, oh, you love the monthly. You
I
love
was wondering
the
if I was going to get
monthlies
away with
every
that.
month.
Well, I like the monthlies because I can decide to change my mind about supporting a project.
But a lifetime
Yeah.
pass, usually you're saving money in the end anyway. So
yeah, it's just if you're willing to fork up, the entirety of the fee up front, because lifetime's obviously going to be a little more expensive.
yeah.
So, it's going to be interesting to watch and see how Brave continues on.
I'll admit that they do have to. Any company that's going to offer a product like Brave does they're always going to have to be creative with the methods by which they get revenue out of people. So yeah, that's really interesting. I myself don't use it I use Firefox, and I got Chrome for the things that Firefox just can't do very well. And then instead of using Brave, I use a Firefox base called LibreWolf, which is, as far as I know, that's Flatpak only. I'm not sure if there's a snap for that or not, but
Alphabet owns my soul at this point.
There's as far as LibreWolf, you can actually get the code base and just just extract it onto your system and run it directly. That's actually how I ran it. I've been running LibreWolf for 2 or 3 years, even before the Flatpak came out. And that's kind of how you did it. But yeah, I think they have a flat pack. I don't think they have a snap. I think they may have an app image, but I can't remember for sure.
The thing about that flat pack is that when you install it that way, they use a full siloed off, containerized method of installing it, to where you have to, if you want to have access to your downloads folder, you got to go into Flat Seal and enable that.
Isn't it funny that other than Brave and Vivaldi, all the privacy-based browsers are forked from Firefox?
Well, I mean, that's obvious, right? I mean,
I just want to mention that Uber Micro Repairs on the YouTube agrees with me when it comes to the whole monthly payments thing.
Agrees with what? Against me or?
Against, yeah, pay for support. Monthly is a killer in this day and age. Everything saps the paycheck. So yeah, that whole one-time payment thing.
Yeah, I don't like. I hate the monthly subscription models. I simply don't participate, but I don't mind as much yearly because I can pay the year and then decide, do I want to up it another year? And I do that with my cell phone with Mint Mobile. I pay one time a year. I pay $180 a year, and I don't have to think about my phone for a whole year. And which is really good if you do need
cheap, dude.
Oh yeah.
Last show we covered this. You really should have been on then, because we had a whole discussion on it, and Bill just had this massive list of things that he pays for on a monthly basis.
I hadn't actually.
Yeah, me too. Well, part of my problem is I have spent so much time in my life being flat broke. And the only way you can afford payments is small payments every month, even if it's going to cost you more than a yearly thing, because you just can't get $100 to $200 together to get one of these annual subscriptions to certain things.
Well, you can't plan ahead. That's the thing. You can if you plan ahead. And if you do plan ahead and figure out how to pull that off and how to do that, it's going to leave you in a better position in the long run, because otherwise you're bleeding out and bleeding out and bleeding out and bleeding out Infinitium. And there comes a point in time when you got to stop and be like, okay, I got to rein in some of this in. And that's how you do it, is by planning ahead.
Well, until my mother died a year and a half ago, I never had enough money to plan ahead. It was very literally day to day that I was hoping to have enough money. So,
and I just want to say it's funny. The irony here is that, you remember, if we think back to the cable model, we were all clamoring for a la carte, and now we have a la carte, and it's all kind of reversing back in on itself.
We have a strange version of a la carte, because I've heard that analogy before. And it's not quite what we were asking for at the time, but it's...
Oh, yeah, you got that right.
Yeah. What I like is a monthly...
Look, cable had TiVo, but that was about it. But we were asking to be able to watch things when we wanted to watch things. And we were asking to not have to pay for 100 channels that we never watched.
Correct. Yeah.
Well, we're still paying for 100 channels that we never watch. You sign up for Disney Plus with Hulu, and you're getting ESPN. And the fun thing is, you still have to log in on a different site for Hulu that uses different software, even though you're paying Disney for it.
And if you notice, we're getting increased.
Yes, we are.
Price creep too. I mean, you think YouTube TV started at $35 a month. I think now it's at like 60 or 65. Netflix continues to go up.
Netflix started out at like what, 9, and then now it's at like 14 or something, 16.
A little over 15.
I looked at YouTube TV and I said, hell no.
YouTube TV was on its way to being something good, and then they got rid of all of their, in-house content, and
it's they're starting to integrate all those channels that nobody wanted to begin with, the reason that we were trying to cut the cord, and now they've folded all that back in and increased the price.
I would probably use it if it wasn't $50.
Drop a marker and move on.
Drop a marker. Yeah.
Well, let's make this another innards one of these days.
Okay, so let's move on to security and privacy.
All right, in security and privacy, RepLead is a newly disclosed speculative execution attack. This is also from Phoronix. Primarily affects Linux, impacts AMD Zen 1 1 Plus and 2, and Intel 6th through 8th Gen. RetBleed exploits return instructions and is able to undermine existing defenses against Spectre Branch Target Injection, or BTI. Once again, this was written by Norbert, and there's no way he could have read this. In particular, RetBleed can beat existing return trampolines, retpolines, defenses, even though when devised just 4 years ago, the belief was that returns weren't susceptible, too impractical to BTI attacks. RetBleed now proves that return instructions can be practically exploited.
I need to defend Norbert. Norbert did not write that. That is straight out of the Foronics article.
Okay. And this is a quote: "A retpoline is a return trampoline that uses an infinite loop that is never executed to prevent the CPU from speculating on the target of an indirect jump." And that's from Tobias Ribezel from Stack Overflow. This does come with added performance cost from the disclosure. Mitigating RetBleed in the Linux kernel required a substantial effort involving changes to 68 files, 1,783 new lines, and 387 removed lines. Our performance evaluation shows that mitigating RetBleed has unfortunately turned out to be expensive. We have measured between 14 and 39% overhead with the AMD and Intel patches, respectively.
Ouch.
Well, yeah, basically all of the fixes that have come in for all of these things over the last, 5-6 years have just had massive cost. Intel's statement on the matter: Intel worked with our industry mitigation partners, the Linux community, and VMM vendors to make mitigations available to customers. Windows systems are not affected as they already have these mitigations by default. They also went on to add that they take these issues very seriously, but don't believe RetBleed is practical outside of a lab environment. If it's not practical outside of a lab environment, I'm not applying the fixes.
Right. Why hammer your performance if it's isolated to that degree?
It's like all of those exploits where, you had to be hands-on with the hardware. Why would I bork my system and make it so much slower when all I have to do is physically protect my system?
Right. Yeah. It's different if it's, something that can be done over net.
Yeah, if it's a remote access, then yeah, that's something else.
There's never going to be a substitution, a reasonable substitution for learning how to conduct yourself online, for learning
Good
how
hygiene.
to good internet hygiene. It's ridiculous to just assume that just because you're in your own home and you've got this machine running, you're connected to the internet, you can just do whatever you want to do and you can be safe because you're behind the locked door of your house. It's unreasonable thinking, but unfortunately there's enough people out there that are not quite enough aware of how to properly conduct themselves, or they leave their safety completely up to antivirus software and things like that.
All you need is a VPN, Bill. That's it.
Oh, yeah, right. There you go.
Completely anonymized.
And I have friends that I talk to all the time these VPN providers are putting commercials out there, and they sell their product based on the idea that if you have this thing running, you're safe. And
my opinion on VPNs. It's just passing the trust. Granted, there are some out there that, have a proven reputation of not recording your data and not being able to give your data to court systems or anything like that. That's mostly trustworthy, in my opinion. And, nothing's perfect, but you got to ask yourself who you trust. You definitely don't trust the open Wi-Fi at Starbucks, but you can at least somewhat more trust the VPN that you're using.
I would say VPN is probably a good idea if you're on a public Wi-Fi, if you're going to be sending your financial credentials.
If you're going to be doing anything on a public Wi-Fi, you need to be using a VPN.
Yeah.
If you're going to connect to a public Wi-Fi, you need to be on a VPN because
you can't even guarantee that you're actually on the proper Wi-Fi. Because some of these restaurants, they don't properly name their SSIDs, and then somebody could set up a Wi-Fi hotspot, name it like
Man in
something
the
that
middle.
looks a little bit more obvious, and then they own everybody that connects to it, you know.
And I have noted that Taco Bell Wi-Fi does not permit VPNs. It will not. It will block any content that isn't going direct from them to your computer.
There's
Now,
ways around that.
Is that commercial VPNs or is that any VPNs?
Oh yeah, because there's ways
I've
around
seen
that.
places that block by protocol, but there's ways around that.
Yeah.
The easiest way for that would be Wireshark. But if they're blocking by like IP, then you use your home VPN. But even if you can't do that, there's still ways around that, and that's I would use something like SSH forwarding and forward port 80 from my home computer, and then everything is going over SSH to my home computer, and everything that I'm doing on the internet at least is protected. Now that still doesn't protect the rest of your system, but that at least protects anything that you're looking at online.
Correct. Next up, Linux kernel team has sorted retbleed chip flaw. And this is from the Register. Linux kernel developers have addressed the retbleed speculative execution bug in older Intel and AMD silicon. But the fix wasn't straightforward. So Emperor Penguin's Linus Torvalds has delayed delivery of next version by a week. And we quote, "When we've had one of these or one of those embargoed hardware issues pending, the patches didn't get the open development, and then as a result missed all the usual sanity checking by all the automation builds and test infrastructures we have," Torvalds wrote in a post. So there you go.
So we've got it worked around, but we haven't finished testing it yet.
Because I think they've been quick to put mitigations in the kernel before that they've ended up pulling back out because the reality was that it wasn't worth the sacrifice in performance for what ended up being a
or the fix caused more problems.
Yeah.
Yeah, and if anyone remembers, Linus was not too happy about having to do this on behalf of the hardware manufacturers.
Right. Yeah.
Well, while we're talking about passing trust, we are all trusting Linus to do the right thing.
We always are, yeah. What you got, Moss?
New Linux malware framework lets attackers install rootkit on targeted systems. From thehackernews.com, a never-before-seen Linux malware has been dubbed a Swiss Army knife for its modular architecture and its capability to install rootkits. This previously undetected Linux threat, called Lightning Framework by Intezer, is equipped with a plethora of features, making it one of the most intricate frameworks developed for targeting Linux systems. The framework has both passive and active capabilities for communication with the threat actor, including opening up SSH on an infected machine and a polymorphic malleable command and control configuration, Intezer researcher Ryan Robinson said in a new report published today. Central to the malware is a downloader, KBioset, and a core, KKDM Flush module, the former of which is engineered to retrieve at least 7 different plugins from a remote server that are subsequently invoked by the core component. In addition, the downloader is also responsible for establishing the persistence of the framework's main module. Quote, "The main function of the downloader module is to fetch other components and execute the core module," end quote, Robinson noted. Are the Swiss going to sue for the use of their knife?
That was a doozy right there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
It does sound interesting. I'd like to hear more about the framework itself.
I know.
There's a link in the show notes.
I do.
Should cover that in that innard section you were planning on doing, Bill.
What, today or next week?
Our backup one, which we'll use for another occasion since you've already done some of the research.
Well, I started messing around with Kali, And I had downloaded it like 10 years ago and installed it, and
It's
I
been
had
almost that long for me.
I had underestimated how much there is to learn about those pen
Well,
testing, and especially Kali. There's so much stuff on there.
Metasploit and Armitage kind of made it really simple there for anybody to be a script kiddie, but that has fallen by the wayside, and I guess there hasn't been an update in a couple of years now.
One cool thing about it is there's direct links in the start menu. It's based on XFCE, by the way, their flagship version, and they've got direct links to like learning resources.
That's awesome. I will have to reinstall.
Go with if you've got the disk space. I went ahead and made a 40 gig KVM and installed the everything version, because you got 3 options for installing, and the everything gives you all of the software. There you go. Yeah, I've got one of those upstairs.
That's what I'll end up doing.
But like I said, I don't even know if I'll be ready by the next show to completely get into it. We ought to make that a series, maybe 4 or 5 episodes long, of going through these.
Well, we were going to do that with licensing, and then we ended up not doing it.
Now we might. That's another.
Well, we covered everything. Why do we need to?
We did cover a lot with that, didn't we?
Yeah.
I wasn't on that show. Did you guys give like examples of software with each?
I don't think we gave examples, but we really went in depth on a couple of the major ones, and then we discussed a lot of the minor ones and the variations, because there are minor variations to just about everything.
Yeah, especially the
GPL.
Well, the GPL. I was going to say the more permissive licenses. There's very nuanced differences between the MITs and the.
And we covered all
Apaches and that.
Go listen to the show.
Yeah, go listen to it.
Yeah, I did. I'm just saying there's examples of why certain software packages might want to choose one option over the other, though. Anyway,
mostly probably just based on what they're familiar with or what they forked off of.
Right. Anybody else gonna? Let's drop a marker. I just learned how to drop markers on Audacity, and I'm like doing it like a madman. That way I can find places on it. All right. Moving on to our bi-weekly wanderings. Tom, we've got yours first on here. Do you want to go into what you've been
working? For the last 2 weeks, I've been essentially close to off grid as far as channel work. So if I haven't pushed out as many things, and sorry to my clients as well, because I haven't gotten pretty much any client work done. But 2 weeks ago, I was actually at a camp. I was teaching a week-long course in nutrition, and did that, which pretty much takes 100% of your time. I had no spare time for anything. And then after that, I got off that. I had one day to turn around and go to the other end of the state of Pennsylvania, and I went up to a writers conference. And when I do the writers conferences and things, sometimes I go and I'll listen to all the different people, and I'll think about what FOSS tools can you do to accomplish these. You go to these things, everyone's like, oh, be on Facebook and Microsoft Word and all these things. I'm like, yeah, I don't use any of that. And still remotely successful in writing. So what many people may not know is I actually have another YouTube channel that is called Writing Done Right. We just crossed 1,000 subscribers over there. And I literally teach people how to do the beginnings from the very first starting of your manuscripts all the way to print and production entirely using free and open source software. So I was talking to some professional editors. I had some of them send me some of their edit samples so I can test, can you do these things in FOSS tools on Linux? So the various tools that I saw that obviously I use a lot of LibreOffice. OnlyOffice is coming down the pipeline. So we did some edit tests in OnlyOffice. I use PHP list videos are huge on my channel. This is an open source self-hosted newsletter program that you can run and self-host on your own system. Trillium Notes is one I've not played around with yet, but this is tied into Notion.so, which one of the people I was talking to up there uses it for all their market research for books. And I'm like, that sounds fascinating, but I don't really want to create an account on somebody else's server. And Trillium Notes is supposed to be pretty much an exact one for one open source self-hostable option. So I'm going to be looking at that soon. And of course, I use GIMP and Sigil are two other ones that I use, all in the Linux community, all FOSS community stuff. All will help you produce and publish your books. So that's what I do over there. And so I've been working on that. Go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry to interrupt. Have you checked out Ghost?
Ghost, is that the web development platform?
No,
or am I thinking something else?
it's
No,
for
okay.
new media creators to publish, share, and grow. Basically, like the Docker version, it's just a great way. It's a self-hosted server where you can blog style posts really of your own. So it's great for like journaling and things like that.
Oh yeah, yeah.
If you're
It's like a self-hosted blogger type platform.
yeah,
I've not looked at it a lot.
not
I'm
quite
gonna
what you're looking
I'd like
for.
to have a look at it. It's not something I've had to do because, I've been doing professional web development for 15 years, and so it's something I looked at once as what I have right now works. But I want to have a look at it. I think it's compelling for people looking for those types of things, for sure. But of course, all that's in addition to the Switch to Linux site, which we're getting back to doing some changes and edits and stuff in the next few months. I'll be talking about some of those. But
How
those
long
are my
have you
wonders.
been doing Switch to Linux?
I believe the channel first, I first put up the first videos in an unlisted mode July of 16, I think. And I think I made the first videos publicly viewable in October of 2016. So we are, what would that make us, the 6th year on Switch to Linux.
Bill, what have you been up to?
Oh, well, first off, nobody respects your desire to use all FOSS software to get the job done more than me. When I started my other podcast that I do with a couple of friends of mine called Three Fat Truckers, I was firmly decided to run that show from top to bottom using nothing but FOSS software, and that's including this BDO Ninja. And well, we tried to use Jitsi. You got your limitations with that, but all of our stuff is stored on Nextcloud, so I really respect anybody that tries to get the job done with FOSS software. And when it comes to things because everybody's heard of Microsoft Office and stuff like that, and when you try to tell people about any kind of alternative, they kind of glass over until you show it to them, and you show them that, well, this does everything that I'm aware of that most people that use Word or
well, not only that, but LibreOffice actually is better than Word, and that with Microsoft Word, as far as I know, you cannot print your book and send it to the printer. With LibreOffice, you can. Everyone else has to take your book out of Office and export it into InDesign and do all the design and interior cover designs inside of InDesign and then send that to the publisher. All of my books are completely start to finish LibreOffice. We use Language Tool as an open source grammar checker and things like that. If you actually open up any of my books and look at the bottom of the copyright page, we do a call out. Every piece of software in the FOSS community that I've used to publish that particular book is listed in the copyright page of the back, because even if it's fonts, I don't have to do that. Because of licensing, I do not have to, but I want to give deep respect to all of the people who put it all together and allowed me to use it without forcing me to buy it. Of course, I want to give back to all those communities as much as I possibly can, but there are times you are, as as we've said, too broke to afford it. And what do you say if you're too broke to afford InDesign and you have a book to print?
Well, this is
LibreOffice
great for the innards. Why don't we move on and cover all this stuff back in the innards?
So, okay, yeah. For my part, work has been crazy, to be sure. We have a series for anybody that doesn't know. If there's anything that you can't find in the store, that's because there is a driver shortage, and it is not likely to go away anytime soon. So not last week, but the week before, immediately after our last show, that week started with a trip out to Rome, New York, followed by 2 trips from Fort Wayne out to Cape Girardeau, Missouri, and back, and then ended with a trip out to, I wrote Pittsburgh and back, but it's actually Brackenridge, which is one of the boroughs on the east side of Pittsburgh, right on the Allegheny River. And that basically kept me out the entire duration of the week, until I think I got back at about 2:30 in the afternoon, Friday or Saturday, that is. I'm sorry, because I had told the guys that I wasn't going to be at our Saturday roundtable, and then I ended up showing up at the last minute. So that was, it is what it is.
You fibber.
Well, I honestly didn't think I was going to make it back in time at all, but if it was at all possible, then I was going to be on there. Yeah, like I said, this all took from early Monday morning until midday Saturday. The next week was slightly less labor intensive, though not a heck of a lot. I started the week out with a trip to Denver, Pennsylvania. Now, that's a small town, kind of right between Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, and Philadelphia. And I took a load of copper out there, and then came back to Fort Wayne, and then took a box out to Cape Girardeau, Missouri. And Cape Girardeau is like right on the Mississippi River, just, I don't know, half hour north of Sikeston, Missouri. Came back, grabbed another van trailer, and took that out to Culloden, West Virginia, which is kind of halfway between Huntington and Charleston, West Virginia. And I got back 5 o'clock on Friday. So that was a less intense, although that probably sounds like a lot. That's actually not near as much as the week before. Okay, that's it, Moss. You get read only. The only tech thing I was forced to do was once again replace the screen on that HP Omen that I use upstairs in the living room. On the last episode of mintCast, I described how I was able to gleefully replace the 4K screen with a 1080p screen. A 4K on a 15-inch laptop is just ridiculous. I'm sorry. I understand the gamers love the 4K, but it is just, unless you use scaling, which Plasma screws up the proportions of the dialog boxes and everything, which is what I'm running up there. You end up with a less than perfect. You end up like splitting pixels and things like that when you do the scaling.
Let me ask a couple of questions right here. Can't you adjust the resolution lower?
Okay, I'm going to get to that. The 1080p screen gave me a more sharp resolution, a sharper render of all the fonts and everything at 1080p with 100% scaling. Okay. Now, yes, I can put the 4K, which is what I ended up doing. I put the 4K screen back in. I'll get to why in a second. But the problem is the boot screen, the Grub screen, because you have the choice with the Grub screen. You got the choice between the highest resolution and 3 or 4 lesser resolutions, and none of those lesser resolutions are widescreen. They're all 4:3. So if you use a custom theme on your Grub, then it stretches all your fonts, and it just looks to me kind of crappy. So,
Bill,
yeah,
have you tried adjusting that in Grub Customizer, because it has a good scaler for that?
Correct, but if you're just using a regular Grub screen, you can adjust it in Grub Customizer. You can adjust the size of the fonts. If you was using a custom theme where it's got the fonts as part of the theme file, then you would have to go into that theme and build a new font yourself, which is, that's a pain in the butt. What I ended up doing, though, is going back to just a regular Grub screen and changing the size of the fonts and then just leaving it the way it is. But that was the reason, because you run a command from the Grub terminal, the command execution from Grub, and you can run a command called video info, and that gives you a list of the available resolutions that Grub will render in. And you basically, on that particular machine, you had a choice between the 4K and then like 1024 by 768 and a couple others that were a 4:3, which but would make them big enough to read, but they'd be stretched. So that was the reason I wanted to go with a 1080p screen. But at any rate, I had to take it back out because beginning of the week last week, I'm using that machine. I had put the 1080p screen in it, and I had to replace the wire that goes from the motherboard to the screen, because the 1080p screen required a 30-pin plug, and I think the 4K screens have a 45-pin, something like that. So I had to order a wire for it, and I hooked it up, and I get it working just great. And then a day later, I'm sitting there using this thing, and smoke starts coming from behind the bezel. So, I go into a kind of a strange denial where I'm like, no, I'm not seeing that. And I kind of like brush it away, thinking maybe, I don't know what I was thinking, but I kind of like fanned it and it went away. And then about a minute later, the screen flickered and then went out completely. And that's when I decided,
The magic smoke is telling you something, Bill.
I don't know why it did that, because I had ran the wire through the little, you got to run, laptops are really something. You got to run that wire through a tiny little channel up through the hinge of the monitor and then up into the bezel, and then it wraps around a couple of things, and it's got one wire that wraps up to the top and plugs into a thing, and then the other wire plugs into the back of the screen. And right there where it kind of makes a bend and go up into the back of the screen, that's where it smoked out, melted, took some of the plastic inside the bezel out with it. So that had to be kind of like coaxed out, pried up, and then I took a little sanding thing and made that smooth again so I could put the old wire back in. I don't know what caused that, but now I tried to put that screen into another machine, and the screen
a short caused that.
Well, duh, you didn't think it was a long, did you?
Ha ha ha. Yeah, I don't know if there was something going on in that wire. That wire was frayed somehow and it caused a short, or if that omen.
If you're saying it happened like right in the joint of the bezel, then it was probably when you ran it through, it got pinched when you closed it and opened it.
Gosh.
Potentially.
Yeah, I suppose. And I don't know. That might have been a used wire too, because I bought that off of eBay about a year ago, and it's just been sitting on a shelf.
It's better that the wire burned than the boards burned.
Yeah. But I think that screen was rendered unusable because I tried to put that in that red HP that I take on the road, because it's got a 1366 by 768 screen in it, which I don't really like. Moss likes those screens, but I don't care much for them.
Okay, then it's better that the screen fried than the motherboard on the laptop.
Oh yeah, that's obvious.
Did you check if the motherboard on that computer is capable of actually running that? Because just because you have a cable that will convert one to the other does not mean that they will actually work.
Meaning that it was putting too much juice out to it and the wire couldn't handle the.
Yeah, I have one of my Dell computers runs a 1366, and it is completely compatible with a 1080p. If I want to put one in there, I would need to get a new wire, but the system is capable of running it. Not all computers are capable of running a different type of screen than was installed in it by default. Just the one I have is a modular build computer, so it can support multiple different things.
Well, I'm not going to throw the screen away until if I decide to put it back in that, try again to put it in that Omen upstairs.
It's just a bad omen.
Gosh, never a dull moment, kids.
That's my joke.
That I couldn't
Tom,
remember
you
if that
fit
was
right
Joe
in.
or Moss. Those omens get a bad rap, but I've had good luck with Linux on those. My daughter's got one, and I've got one. The one I've got's got the i7 with the GTX NVIDIA card in it, which I don't use for anything. But
those HP omens have good numbers, and they're low cost, but they're very cookie cutter. They're kind of the low end gaming machines.
Yeah,
I'd still
it ain't
love to
much to
have one.
look
Don't get
at.
me wrong, but yeah, I've heard that they have thermal issues and some other compatibility issues, but all in all, it's a great starter gaming laptop.
Yeah. The one I've got I've used for, I mean, it's a beast power wise for a laptop, and it's got 32 gigs of RAM in it, and the i7 almost 4 gigahertz clock speed on that thing with 8 cores. So I mean, it does everything that I need it to do, and it's got the NVMe drive in it. My son's got a Acer gaming laptop that's got 2 NVMe drives in it. Just a beast. But anyway,
like the MSIs, but that's just me.
Yeah, if you got $2 or $3 grand, I mean, if you got like Apple money to drop on a
Not with
laptop.
the MSIs. Not with the MSIs.
The MSIs are not expensive?
No. I've even recommended one to my cousin because it was that proper balance between price and performance. I got mine used, and it's got a what is it, a GTX 950 in it, so it's older. I only paid like $400 for it.
Yeah,
so.
see, most all of my machines I bought used at pawn shops and that, because those people don't know what they got.
When I bought it, the reason the person was selling it was because it had a bad hard drive, and that's not a hard fix.
That is so non-issue. I've got drawers full of hard drives to slap in these things. Yeah. So anyway, that was the limit to my experience in the last 2 weeks, is just work and dealing with that omen. But I don't know. What do you got going on, Moss?
Okay, no Kali, huh?
Well, yeah, okay, yeah, I did. Well, I mentioned that before. That's why I didn't say it again.
Okay.
I got it installed on a KVM, and like I said, we're going to start a series next week talking about pen testing distributions. I've got a long way to go with that. So, I mean, there's not really much to be said about it right now, other than it's far bigger than I thought, and I don't think I'm going to even scratch the surface as to all the things that you can do with those. But yeah, I think we're going to start with Kali. Moss is going to do a section on Pen 2.
Yeah, right.
It's not a pen testing, but should we also cover Tails? Have Moss cover Tails, and then I'll pick another tool.
But if I cover my cat's tails, they won't be happy with me.
Wah, wah, wah.
All right. You don't want to talk, so it's my turn. I've installed I've installed a couple of distros on my laptops, the latest Neon and Makulu Shift, and still have another couple, Zorin 16.1 and Ubuntu Mate 22.04, waiting for something better to replace them with. I also inspected a couple of others via Live Disk, which didn't fit me. That included Pen 2, and that included eLive. I referred those to others on this team or the Distro Hoppers team. Of course, all my machines feature Mint 20.3, and 60% of them also feature Bodhi 6. I just put a lot of partitions out on the machines that I'm playing with the most. I will probably be reviewing Makulu Linux Shift next episode of Distro Hoppers. It functions a lot like Zorin, but has some unique features. Shift literally features several complete desktops selected by opening the desktop manager, selecting the desktop, and waiting for it to load. On my machine, that's 5 to 8 seconds, with no need to even log out. New themes, wallpapers, etc. with each desktop. One or two appear to be emulations. For instance, Plasma appears to actually be Cinnamon modified to look like Plasma, and you don't get the KDE tools with it. You get 8 desktops for free and 8 more if you send them $30 as a one-time donation. And for that money, they throw in the pro version of their gaming distro, Makulu Game R. On to other things. It looks like the school year starts August 3rd. I'm looking forward to the extra money and hopefully open minds, as well as the hope of sufficient stamina and spoons to continue through the year. I haven't finished a year yet, but I've worked some of the last 2 years. And Joe tells me my teeth are on the way, should be here tomorrow. I am still toothless today. That's why I'm lisping so much. He also sent some other goodies and something I accidentally sent him that I shouldn't have. And that leads into Joe, unless we're going to do book club first.
Get your mind out of the gutter.
What gutter?
Oh, you said sent him something I shouldn't have. I could just hear everybody listening on YouTube going,
oh, yeah. It was a power supply for a dock for my Lenovo's. All right. Take it,
if you
Joe.
want to cover books, I'll gladly talk about books all day long. You know that.
I found out I've been trailing on the Temeraire series. They just published the 9th and final book, and I found that I haven't read 7 or 8 yet.
I'll have to look back at that series again. I think I got bored about 3/4 of the way through and just stopped.
Well, I started reading it to my wife, and in the middle of book 1, we all of a sudden got a new Demon Squad book, and poof, we were off on Demon Squad again. And I don't think we ever got back to it. And I think now that book is in storage.
Oh, there's a new Demon Squad book. I'll have to check that out too.
No. It was a long time ago. It's that long ago, and we've been doing all the Dresden cycle in the middle.
There's a lot of Dresden books. Okay. Well, honestly, I haven't done a lot over the last couple of weeks. It's been entirely too hot to get anything done here. I tried to record some videos for YouTube, but my phone that I was using for a camera overheated halfway through and no such luck. But I've had some stress going on in my life, and I really wanted to get some projects done because I find it therapeutic. Plus, there was a half-done project right in front of me at the time. One thing I did notice is that in like previous videos, I was able to keep recording and switch back and forth between the front and rear camera on my phone. So I could do everything in fewer takes. But I guess with one of the recent updates, that functionality went away, and I now need to stop recording before I can switch from the front camera to the back camera. What it means is I'm going to end up going back to using OBS and do my recording using 2 cameras and switching between scenes in OBS, because you can set that up as a hotkey and just click and switch back and forth between camera views, while still keeping both cameras in the shot, just making one the main focus and the other one down in the corner, and back and forth. I finished up a couple of simple projects. One of my homemade Bluetooth adapters had an issue with the 3.5 millimeter jack, and needed to be replaced, so I decided to give it a little upgrade. I switched it to a flush-mounted 4-pole jack instead of the previous wire jack that I had on there. That made it look like a squeeze gun, because it would stick out like that far, like 1.5 inches, 2 inches. I even wired to where the mic used to be on the main board, and I was pleasantly surprised with how well that worked with this device. This was previously a Sony XB650 BT headset, but I like the size that it ended up being after moving all the components over to one side and wiring on a 3.5 millimeter jack. And here, let me just turn that on real quick for you so you can see it working. I don't know if you can. Nope. That's too bad. There we go.
I can see that. Yep.
Yep.
Cool.
Yep. Okay. The only issue that I have with this device is that it will not charge and be able to use it at the same time. I think that's the same with the other one that I made, which is a whole lot bulkier. It's like twice the size. The next one that I do will probably be I'm going to take a completely ruined pair of Hesh 3s, and they do allow for charging while in use. The only problem that I have with that is that I've yet to find a pair of Hesh 3s that I can't repair back to usability. They are not the greatest headphones ever, but as long as you have access to a 3D printer, it seems like you can keep them going forever. One may get sacrificed anyway. I'm still working on my third iteration of the Bluetooth mod devices that I'm making. This one should lose the casing entirely and be smaller while still having a larger battery. I have been using the second one, which is this one that I'm wearing right now, quite a lot. The sound quality is good and the battery life is a couple of days. And yes, this does have the MMCX mod on it. Now, I tried replacing switches on one of them last night, and I did okay on the first switch, but I really messed up on the second one and pulled off the pad on one side, and there's probably no way you're really going to be able to see all that. Um, and I was able to fix that issue with pulling off the pad there on the far right-hand side.
Too close to get good focus, Joe.
Yeah, it's so tiny. But anyways, I had pulled off the pad and I had fixed that, but I guess I used too much heat, and now the thing won't turn on at all. These are very low cost devices, like $3, and I don't mind losing one. And I think I learned a lot working on it. If I get another one that breaks, then I may try to swap components on the board until one of them works. Also, want to mention that there are 3 buttons, and the third one was going to be the hard one. But it'll be good to use for measuring so that I can get started on the 3D print design in Tinkercad. And it's something I can work on in small increments whenever I'm bored or have a little bit of time. And I'll get that all done and put together in the next couple of weeks. It's just going to be a bit more difficult, and I don't know if I want to continue on with switching out the switches or if I want to 3D print a new way to push down the buttons that are already there. Now, moving on from that, I picked up a 1GX1 Pro with a bloated battery for a very good price. This has an i5 10th gen processor. It's a little 7-inch like laptop. I have ordered a new battery for it, but it'll take like a month to get here. I have hooked it up without a battery and it will turn on, but it will not stay on for long. I'm assuming that once it gets to a certain point after the boot process, there's a heavy draw, and that's too much for the power coming through the cord. So it's probably an issue with not having the battery there. And it could also be an issue with overheating, but it's a bit hard to diagnose that in the heat. Now the battery was so bloated that the frame had come apart, and I was a bit concerned with it being bent out of shape. And I was worried that, maybe the main board was bent. But with where the main board is, that actually wasn't a problem. And once I removed the old battery, the frame mostly went back into shape. There are 2 of screw posts that are broken. They're the center ones in the front and the back. But it shouldn't be too much of a problem. The 4 corners are still fine. I'm hoping that the battery is the only issue, but it has the potential for overheating from something else. Something had to cause that battery to bloat in the first place. Might need to take it apart again and make sure the fans are clean and the thermal paste is done correctly. I've seen teardowns of these, and it turns out that from the manufacturer, they do a really terrible job with the thermal paste. Okay. Now, I haven't been able to find a lot of documentation specifically on this version. It is the older version because there is an i7 11th gen version that's out, and there is a little bit of teardowns floating around with that, but still, not quite certain on the one that I have. I've seen enough that I could take it apart and put it back together if I needed to, but not enough to know how the circuitry works. Now, my Dell XPS 13 laptop, I still have not tracked down the issue with the battery, but it does work well enough while plugged in. I replaced the Ubuntu distro that was on it with Mint, and then I reset up all my applications. I'm still debating with myself what to do next to isolate the problems to see if it's the batteries that I've ordered. I mean, I've ordered several replacement batteries and none of them have worked, or if it's the board itself. I could spend about $160 on eBay if I wanted to and order something with a messed up screen that has like an i7 processor that's the exact same size board, and that would tell me, but that kind of feels like a bit of a cheat, because then I could move the batteries onto that one and see what happens, and move the board over to the good screen, and hey, I have a working system. So yeah, I'm not sure. What do you guys think?
You got it going on with the hardware, Joe. That's for sure.
Think you are requiring us to think?
Think, yeah. I
Once
needed
in a
to.
while, it helps.
I need to reboot. Turn it off, turn it back on again.
I like playing with hardware. I mean, I play with software all day at work, and it's all other people's software, and then
What a nightmare.
Yeah. So I go home and I like to play with hardware.
Yeah. And you are definitely good at it. You should have.
I wouldn't say that.
Well, I mean, you could probably. Do you have a camera that you can point directly down that works good for?
My Note 10 Plus has a really, really good camera, and it does really close up really well. So I'll use that, and then what I'll do, since I'll be using two cameras, is I'll take this webcam that I have in here out there, and I will set it up. And like I said, I'll use OBS to do picture-in-picture, and I'll just switch the focus between the two cameras, one being large and the other one being small down in the corner, and then hotkey it back and forth. And yeah, you'll get a really close-up view of what I'm working on. And sometimes there's focus issues, but not usually. And if you want to see somebody really good with hardware, I did invite the crowd from the Coder on YouTube, from their Discord channel over here, to watch us today. That's all the chatter you've been seeing on the YouTube channel. So
okay.
like a lot of those guys have their own channels, or they do a lot of their own work on hardware. And the Coder, really good with working on like PlayStations, Xboxes, you name it. It's fun to watch him work on that type of thing. And I have dropped links and checked this out for the Coder before, so I don't know if I want to set that up again this time, or just recommend listening to some old shows.
I don't see a problem with that. Anyway, if nobody has anything else, we'll move on to our Linux.
No.
You forgot Josh.
We
Did
got
I?
Josh.
Oh gosh,
what
I'm
have you
sorry.
been up to?
Chopped liver over here. I don't know.
No, I'm sorry. I had scrolled down when I was listening to Joe, and I just completely skipped over Josh. I apologize.
You can skip me. It's fine.
No. You ain't getting out that easy.
Darn it. Okay.
Gosh.
Well, I guess I got to talk.
I guess I will be doing the editing on this show, so I can get rid of all my embarrassing moments.
It's fine. Anyway, it's good to be back on mintCast after a period of absence. I've certainly missed being here. Hope I can make Josh it more frequently. Thank you. It's good to be with you guys. Not dissimilar to Joe's situation, California has been blazing hot outside, like literally on fire, if you know about the whole Yosemite situation up there. So most of what I've been up to has been indoor oriented. So I purchased a watch repair kit and watch press from Amazon and started doing the battery replacements for just a bunch of dead watches in the house. I've got more to go, actually. the parts are small and can be fiddly, especially if you have big old ham fingers like I have. But I've done 5 of them so far without a failure. Maybe a couple scratches on the back, but not a failure.
Congratulations. I mean, 5 of them without a failure. That
Yeah, I mean, for someone who doesn't know what they're doing, yeah, I mean, it's worked out. So the tools, having the proper tools, is really the key there, because trying to wrench those things open with like screwdrivers and stuff, that's all bad. So I've also taken up reading a good bit more recently. I'm still working on Robert Jordan's The Eye of the World. That's a very long and dedicated read.
love that whole series.
Yeah, it's 800 plus pages of fine print. So I had to run down to my local Dollar Tree and pick up some magnifiers to get through this one. But I'm close to finishing it. And after that, I am going to read Half My Life. And let me see if I can get this up there, by our guest today, Tom. And I'm really looking forward to this one. And also, I want to pick up Synaptergy next. So really looking forward to reading those. And
Cool. I hope you enjoy them. Let me know.
thank you, Tom. Absolutely, I will do. And I have a couple of classic Westerns also lined up too that I picked up at the local used bookstore. So yeah, got a lot of reading ahead. And thanks to Joe, I also have some audio books to go through, just 1 or 2.
Just a couple.
Yeah. As far as tech is concerned, I haven't done a whole lot since the last episode I was on. I did purchase a new set of headphones, which are the ones I'm wearing here, the Philips SHP 9600s. These are supposed to be the next iteration of the legendary 9500s, which I also own. But the sound profile is so different that I don't really consider them like the next version of the 9500s. Those are very popular, for under $100 for people that are kind of that want to be audiophiles like myself, but it's that whole champagne taste beer budget. But yeah, they're kind of like a standalone. They sound very different. But I've been pleased with them. They fixed a lot of the issues that the 9500s did have, such as the clamping force being too loose and the lack of bass in them. So, yeah, they've been good.
I'm more like store brand soda budget.
Hey, then you'll have to tell me what you think of those Sennheisers.
Uh-oh.
I will once I get them.
Yeah, those are usually pretty good. I also purchased a new Android phone, and it's my first brand new unit since I bought my Nexus 5 back at the beginning of 2014. I went with OnePlus Nord N25G.
I just talked about that phone.
Oh man, is it good? It's for sub $300.
The screen is awesome. The camera is garbage.
You didn't like the camera?
Camera is crap.
Well, I don't take pictures, so or very rarely, so I don't
that
really.
That screen is beautiful. 90 hertz refresh rate.
This one's 60. Yeah, they kind of had to cut a couple corners to get it in it. I believe T-Mobile listed it $282 plus tax on their website. So
I got it for free.
You did?
I did. I traded in an S3 for it. T-Mobile has this deal where you can take in any old phone as long as it's working and the screen's not cracked, and hand it to them, and they will hand you a Nord.
Oh, nice! I didn't know that. That would have been a good route to go.
Sweet. I have dozens of phones laying around.
Right? No, we all drawers full at this point.
Yeah, Tom, but you and I are using the cheap phone service, so it wouldn't help to go to T-Mobile.
Well, I'm kind of grandfathered in on their the unlimited plan for the family, and I think I pay like $130 or $40 a month for 4 lines. So with all unlimited, it's the only reason I stick with them. Anyway, yeah, I've been using it for a couple months now, and I have to say it's surpassed my expectations for a sub $300 phone. Performance and battery life, really good. I was able to put my SD card in it and carry my local music library with no issue, and playback through my wired buds has been excellent as well. So That's the most important part for me. I'm pleased with the purchase overall, but do hope for the day that we have a viable Linux phone as a replacement. Sorry, Ubuntu Touch, I tried, but yeah, with the shutdown of the 3G networks, we're out of luck there because they don't support LTE.
The Pine phone does not support VoLTE.
I think it does, but you have to hop over onto like Mobian, some of those
Specific
other ones.
distros.
Yeah,
Okay,
and
so it's specific distros. Okay.
yeah,
I
there
was
should
not a
be.
huge fan of Ubuntu Touch when I tried it on the tablet. I don't know if the phone was any better or not, but
Yeah, it was probably the most mature, I think, of all the ones that I tried. I mean, I didn't go through all of them. There's quite a few.
The only one that I've really liked, the operating system for the Pine phone, has been Manjaro with Plasma.
Yeah, that was probably second best, I think. I was not a fan of Fosh. I think you weren't either, right, Joe? Yeah. So it was kind of slow. But I have to give OnePlus kudos on delivering a device that outperforms its price tag. It's a rarity these days, and I recommend it if anyone is in the market for a mid-tier Android device. And that's about all I got.
I've heard a lot of chatter that the OnePluses used to be the go-to phone for people that wanted to put custom ROMs on them, and from what I understand, it's they've gotten away from that. It's far more difficult now.
Well, with their flagship device, especially when it comes to the price to performance, they used to be the people to go to for price to performance and having the unlocked bootloader so that you could put whatever you wanted on there. But there are limitations that come with an unlocked bootloader or a non-stock ROM. When it comes to like Google Pay or any of the pay services, if you have a rooted device, they simply don't work. A lot of banks also don't allow it, et cetera, et cetera.
well, rooted is not the same though as an unlocked bootloader.
No,
so
right,
you make
but
that
the
distinction.
point of having an unlocked bootloader is to put a custom ROM on there, and once you put that custom ROM on there, it becomes a problem.
Can't you lock
Yeah,
the bootloader again?
I don't recommend doing anything with the phone other than basic communication anyway. So
about where I'm at.
Yep.
And I've got one of those Note 10 Pluses just like Joe has, and I can verify gleefully that the quality of the camera on that thing is amazing, and it's several iterations behind what's current, and it's still, I don't know, I'll probably
maybe that's why I hate the camera so much on the Nord, because I've got the Note 10 Plus, and it's awesome.
I want to be more excited about phones, but I'm just not, because I just like Tom said, I do phone things on a phone. I do computer things on a computer, but I realize that's not how normal people.
I can get excited about the new phones, but considering the prices, I'm not going to rush out and try and pay $2,000 for the Galaxy Z Fold 3.
Good Lord.
Especially,
I got one of those. It's ridiculous. It just stretches the picture sideways.
And it has a lot of issues with certain applications not being able to run at all on it because of the screen size.
Oh, did you give the N20? Have you used the simultaneous cameras yet, where you can kind of do? I guess you can record video from both front and rear at the same time. So if you walk along
and watch it catch fire in your hands.
Honestly, I tried a couple of things to improve the camera quality on it, and they really didn't work. And I closed the camera app, and I'm probably never going to open it again because that camera really sucks.
Maybe you just got a bad one, Joe.
No, other people have said the same thing. But he's also got the Nord N20, and I have the Nord N200, so that might also be the difference.
Oh, yeah. That's the next step.
Down, it's a whole nother zero.
Yeah.
And the zero is in the
like
camera.
10 times better.
Right, 200's got to be better than 20.
Right. No.
That's how it always works.
Yeah, that's like my mistake getting a Pixel 3a XL instead of a 3 XL. I thought, gee, the A must be the upgrade.
So counterintuitively, I'm hearing the pixels are the ones you go for now if you're going to do a custom ROM on it. And
yes, that is the fact, because as much as it's Google, they make it easiest to reflash, they make it easiest to unlock,
isn't that
and
interesting?
more ROMs support them than anything else.
Not only unlock, but relock. I'm running Calyx OS on 2 of my 3.
Yeah, only a few can relock. Calyx can relock. If I'm not mistaken, EOS just came out with a major release. They might be able to lock that one now. I'm not 1% sure, so don't quote me on that. But I remember seeing some other phone can also now lock, which was a new feature.
Is
But,
E on
yeah.
Android 12 yet? That's the reason I put
I
Calyx on it.
don't
instead of E.
know.
I'd rather
Yeah,
have my phone was already upgraded to 12, and you brick your phone if you go back.
Yeah, I don't know. I haven't looked.
Is that right? Is that how that works? If you get 12 on your phone, you can't.
Well, it
Yep.
depends on your phone, because the custom ROM isn't a blank ROM. It overwrites the files for the core Android that's on there, and so whatever you have, if you are on 12, you would have to have a way to roll your phone back to 11. Google phones can do that. I've done it before. I don't know about other models,
Well,
but it doesn't make a
shouldn't you-
lot of sense to, but yeah.
Shouldn't you be able to have something like TWRP on there and like just force or completely wipe it and then force the old kernel on there?
Maybe,
Again,
but that is
it
a lot of
depends on
work.
how the phone is put together. The reason the Googles are better at this is Google has a simple script that you run the phone in ADB, and it will literally overwrite everything and return it to whatever stock version of Android you're calling for that phone. Other manufacturers, to my knowledge, don't have that.
Yeah, well, I was reading on Lineage that they said that you really can't put an older kernel on your phone than what you've already got on there. And Calyx had a new version with Android 12, and it's running great on my phone. I showed it to Bill a couple times, showed him the boot. You remember how cool that was?
Yeah, I like that boot screen. It had a cool boot splash.
But if E had a been to 12, I would have gone there, because with if I had E on my phone, I could be using Ubuntu Web and have conversions. Go
Well, I
ahead.
guess I didn't mention.
We're sidetracking you.
I started the process of rooting and ROMing that Amazon device you sent me. I haven't finished yet, but I've got it rooted. I don't have it ROMmed yet.
Well, let me know.
Well, is that everybody? Okay. Moving on to our Linux innards.
Again.
I marked it this time, so we're stuck with it. Right. So the topic for this week is a person. We have an interview here with Tom from Switch to Linux. And again, welcome to the show, Tom. And I guess first off, what is your Linux origin story? How did you get started using Linux?
So it actually started serendipitously way back. I was working for a startup company doing academic software sales, and to make things easier, I was running multiple computers. And so I had 2 different laptops set up. One of them was running our Salesforce instance and all that kind of, the back end of the stuff for the salesman notes. And then the front end was, what I'm showing the professors as I'm doing web conferencing and stuff. And so the computer I was using as my backup was an old crappy compact computer that they had a really poor design. The hard drive was actually screwed directly into the main plastic hard frame. So any movement of the computer put every bit of shock right into the hard drive. And the thing went through 2 hard drives in a matter of like 6 months. And so I'm living in the middle of Nowheresville, Wyoming. And I'm like, can I reinstall Windows on an external hard drive so this doesn't keep happening? I find no, but there's this other thing called Ubuntu that will. And so I download a copy of Ubuntu, install it on the external hard drive, and I'm running all of my Salesforce instances on Ubuntu. And this is, I'm trying to remember what year it was. It's been like 2011, 2012 or something. And so I did that for a little bit, and then I stopped using that after I had gotten another computer in there or whatever reason. And then I didn't think a lot more of anything Linux related until Windows 10 starts coming out. It wasn't yet out. It was just, they're starting to do the ramping the promotions and all this kind of stuff for Windows 10. And it's like, hey, this thing's always connected to the internet and it's collecting all this telemetry that you can't turn off. And I'm like, this is not okay. I don't want my things collecting any data that I do not want collected. And so I'm like, where's that Ubuntu thing? And so by now it's a couple years old. But I went ahead and I found Ubuntu, and it would have been it. I remember I was running Ubuntu 16 alpha, like pre-alpha. It wasn't even out as an alpha. And I didn't even know that. I was so stupid. I didn't even know that was a pre-alpha, but it was so stable. I didn't even know. But I started running that on one of my computers. So there I am in my setup. Sorry for the motorcycle just went by. There I'm in my setup, and I have a Windows computer over here where I'm doing some work. And I have a Linux computer in the middle, and I have a Mac computer over here. So I'm actually working in my office with all three systems at all times. So I'm finding myself more and more on the Ubuntu machine going, man, this is pretty good. The one problem I had with Ubuntu is Unity, which Unity's okay after you get used to it. But when I'm talking about solid work, I like that traditional Windows setup. I absolutely hate what Windows 11's doing, what Windows 10's doing, even the default of Windows 7, where it has things pinned to the bar. I hate these stupid pinning applications. It is the most useless garbage for my workflow. I want to see a taskbar on the bottom, which is all dead space if you're not using it anyway, so you may as well use it for something. And I want to see all the different bars and tasks and everything that is open. And I am finding plugins to cause Unity to Unity to do that. And it's like, it was kind of a mishmash. So I'm hunting around at different things. I finally find this thing. It was Linux Mint Cinnamon. I installed this thing on a computer. I'm like, this is the holy grail of computers, and it was Cinnamon more than Linux Mint, but of course they're the ones that develop it. So whatever's the same. So that's kind of how I landed on Linux, with Linux Mint being my preferred distro. So pretty much all of the systems I use, I set up the same general way because it's how I'm productive. And I've took the time to learn how to use GNOME and Plasma and all these other things. And it's just the setup of having a taskbar, having quick launch buttons that as many times as I push the button, I get a new instance, having the ability to see and to sort all the windows on the taskbar. These are the things that cause me to be highly functional in the various things that I'm doing. And Linux Mint allowed me to do that with the most overall stability. So that's kind of how I landed on it.
That is cool. So you like the XP style of Cinnamon?
Yeah, basically. So anytime, as I talk about on my videos, I like the larger taskbar that you get on the more modern look, but I hate the functionality. So I actually just go through and pick the modern view when you're setting it up on the getting started on Linux Mint, and then I just toggle the panel settings to make it work the way I want it to, which is still an option. So, but yeah, I do. I really like that layout. It works good for a computer and mouse combination, which is what I do in my workflow.
And having a usable desktop, I'm assuming too.
Yes. And the usable desktop is important because the active projects are on the desktop. The archive projects are in the documents folder. Makes a lot of sense.
So
Unity is another one that young people probably get along with better because it follows the mobile paradigm, almost a little bit more the convergent paradigm of the apps drawer. And
yeah, and I really hate how you can't use the desktop on like GNOME. So
yeah,
that is terrible.
Yeah, that's
so I take it you're more of a graphical user than you are a command line user?
Generally, I do lean that way. I'll use I have a lot of powerful scripts I've written in the command line, but I don't spend an exorbitant amount of time in the command line. Mostly in writing books, I have several command line tools that I've developed to help with that process, and also in video production. I have a data cap of 150 gigabytes a month. I can't go over that. So when I produce my videos, if the video size are too large, I just use FFmpeg in in the command line to scale the video down to a size that still looks pretty much exactly the same, but it's, you know, a fraction of the size. So that way I scale my videos, so I'm not
You
wasting
use
time.
FFmpeg directly from the command line.
Yes.
That is cool. That takes a little bit of skill because those commands are nuts.
Long.
Yeah, and I've written some document scripts to help with what I'm trying to do. So one of them is if I have to fix audio, you know, invariably you're somewhere, something gets messed up in the audio. With FFmpeg, you can load up the files. You can take the video, open up like Audacity. You can fix it over there, export the new file. In an FFmpeg, you can load both files. You can strip the audio track of the one and just overlay it with the audio track of the other. And it's like an instant step without any other software. So there's tools you can do with FFmpeg in the command line that I don't know of a graphical way to do that, but it's a huge time saver.
There is a graphical process, but it takes a little bit longer than what you're saying. It involves using Audacity and Handbrake, and it's definitely not as streamlined as just typing out one command and having it all happen at once.
I mean, to be sure, it's a complicated command, but I have it in my scripts folder. I paste it in and I just update it with the file names I need. So,
but most of those GUIs are just different front ends for FFmpeg anyway. So
yeah.
WinFF is
nice
probably the one that comes to mind right off the top, the simplest. Just
WinFF, is that for Windows?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's available on Windows, and in fact, the first time I saw it, it was on Windows. But no, it's a repo application, and it's just a real simple front end for FFmpeg, but it also allows you to add additional commands to the string.
This is converts videos. Yeah.
I mean, it's the interface is simple. It's for somebody that wants an FFmpeg that's not going to use a lot of the really esoteric commands in it. Handbrake is my tool of choice for that. Handbrake's come a long way. That is a fantastic piece of software.
It does have a bit of a learning curve, but I have found it interesting to use so far. I've done a couple of videos of my own for YouTube where I was recording myself doing some small electronics work, and not many, but Handbrake is what I use to switch out and replace audios when I had to do an audio cleanup, and to shrink. Well, I can't even remember all the tools that I use, but to shrink down the size so that I could actually upload it, because I guess the quality I was using was way too high. Just things like that.
I've got a process I call make and break, where if I get a Blu-ray and I want to put it on my Jellyfin server, I use a piece of software called Make MKV that literally just rips it bit for bit into an MKV file on the hard drive. But you're talking 35 to 50 gigs in size. So then Handbrake will take that. Now, if you're happy with Handbrake's got a lot of presets where they take care of a lot of the details for you, and you just choose what kind of device you're going to play it on. And if you're happy with those settings, then you really don't have to screw around with it too much. But
it's just like 3 or 4 clicks, convert it to this type
of device, and then it'll convert. And usually a Blu-ray movie will convert to down 3.5, 4.5 gigs.
We're taking away from Tom here, so let's turn it back.
Right on.
All right.
Yes. So after figuring all this kind of stuff out, and this would have been like, I think it would have been like November-ish of 2015, and I've spent like 6 months playing around with different Linux systems. I'm like, this is kind of cool. Let's go ahead and start a channel on this, right? And so I started with building the basic website up and looking at all the different Linux distributions and getting started on Linux. And so one of the things I noticed, so a lot of the Linux channels and a lot of great people in Linux world, that a lot of them are very technical and some of them aren't necessarily as good of teachers as others and things like that. And I have an education background. And so I was like, well, let's see if I can just go ahead and create a channel where I can teach anybody that's interested, maybe not the masses, but anybody that's interested that may be a little bit intimidated by the computers, how you can switch to Linux and play around with different free software and things. And so, I did a lot of that, and focused a lot on the privacy aspects, because that's the thing that really drove me to Linux. That I didn't want an operating system that's perpetually collecting every bit of data. It's not scanning my files, not basically making a connection to the mothership into my home office, potentially recording my microphones and things like that, which is what Windows 10 seems to do on a lot of bases, especially if you allow it to do what it wants to do. And so that's kind of what I wanted to offer there. And then, of course, that had to branch again into different FOSS work. I'd mentioned the channel earlier, but I have another channel called Writing Done Right. And so I write a lot of books, and they are entirely produced with free and open source software. I write them in-house. I send them out to a couple different people for edits and things, get everything all patched up in my edits, produce the books actually on Linux, get them completely ready to be sent to the same professional book printers that everybody else in the world uses. And I did an entire channel teaching people how to build a successful author career, also with free and open source software. And so it was kind of interesting to see a lot of people using those different tools, and a lot of people learning how to do things with free and open source software. And on the writing channel, I try and use cross-platform things that you can install if you're still on Windows and Mac. But if there's one thing you don't know about the author community, no author is making a lot of money off of selling books. The average self-published book, for example, sells 13 copies. It's to usually like your 6 family members, your 3 best friends, and your 3 worst enemies who want to identify everything wrong you wrote in the book. And that's kind of what sells. And so I just came back from a writers conference where I was providing also a lot of input on a lot of these things as well. And so it's kind of cool to being able to teach and help people to use free software, because we're not making a lot of money on our craft of writing, and how to use that software in put something real and tangible out in that world. So was it Josh that held up the book earlier? That book was entirely written, edited, published, produced entirely on Linux. Everything from here, I personally sent it to the book printers. That goes into the system, and then whatever they're running, I don't know. But then it prints out. You just go onto Amazon on whatever system you have, or Barnes and Noble, or anywhere else you can buy books online. You can look up my name and buy my books.
Well, Tom, your numbers just added up to 12.
Well,
are you counting the 13th copy as your personal copy?
The one you bought yourself?
Yeah, I mean that book there, I've not done a lot of promotion on it yet, so it might legitimately have sold about 12 books. I think I've probably sold about 25 or 30.
We were just talking about our Moss was just talking about your statistics for self-publishing. But I do want to say
you said 6 family members, 3 best friends, and 3 enemies, and I was wondering where the 13th book went.
Oh, the 13th book is the random one guy that finds it on the internet. Yeah.
And I just want to say it's incredible that you're doing all of it on Linux, because most people, even Linux enthusiasts, when they're doing something that they're giving to everyone else, they have to do that last mile on either a Mac or a Windows system, because that's the only way to interface with the rest of the world.
Yeah, and so I was talking to one of the professional editors, and she edits books for big publishing companies, and I was talking to her, and I said, "Hey, can you give me a sample edit so I can see, can we do, if I wanted to hire you to edit a book, could we collaborate?" Because she starts in like, I only use Word. Well, does that mean she only uses Word and everybody works with her only uses Word? No, it means you have to use the docx file format. Well, LibreOffice does the docx file format perfectly fine, including tracking changes in the editing is what she needs. OnlyOffice does, there's one component I can't find in OnlyOffice if it's there. But if you want something that more matches what Word looks like. OnlyOffice might be your better choice. I still find LibreOffice a little bit better in that respect. But yeah, and I have a Windows and a Mac computer in the van here. They haven't been turned on in at least 6 months, just in case I'm dealing with a client in web design that's like, I'm looking at this and I see a problem and I'm in a Mac, and also I'm like, all right, let me pull up the Mac if it still works.
That's right. Somebody mentioned you're permanently on the road.
Yeah, I'm in fact, it was a year ago this week. I got rid of the house, put all the remaining tiny things I had in storage, and jumped into a converted van. And so, yeah, I've been entirely on the road for just shy of 1 year. Exactly. So,
and the audience should note he did not put his cats in storage.
No, I have 2 cats down here. They're both chilling. One's right down here, and the other one's probably up front somewhere. Yeah, kitties are not in storage. That would be interesting, though.
And circling back real quick, Tom, to the books. If someone wanted to support you, is there a difference in terms of percentages where they purchase it from, like from Amazon or?
Yeah, and this goes for any author. Some of it depends on how you're printing it. So for any author, if they have the book available on their personal website, buying it directly from them on their personal website is always the best, because I'll get the books in from the printer, and being is that I'm also the publisher, I have an LLC as my publishing company, and as the publisher, I can get copies of books in, and they cost between $3 and $5 depending on what the book is as the publisher. So if I were publishing your book, of course, we add a little bit more into that. It costs like $7 or $8 depending on the book, but I'll get those in for $5. If I sell them at the same retail price of about $12 and add, a couple dollars for the shipping, I'm going to see a lot more price differential. Now, the way I'm structured, the second highest amount of money I get is buying through Amazon. That's not always the case with people. It depends on if an author is only publishing, if they're a self-published author and they're publishing only through Ingram and pushing it out, they're going to make more money on Barnes & Noble than on an Amazon sale. But if the self-published author sells it on Amazon and then in Ingram, 2 separate places uploading the book, Amazon always has a higher rate because they have a higher payout than anybody else does, because they control all of the other elements of it. There's no in-betweens that Amazon has to pay. So Amazon is the best place to buy a book for somebody that does not want to buy it directly from a website.
Unless Amazon decides to cut your price.
Yes and no, but Amazon generally, if Amazon does cut the price, I'd have to double check on that, because I think they have cut prices a couple times for some of my books. Yeah, but it's still not a lot different. It's not a huge differential. Amazon generally pays out 60% of the retail price for a print book, and between 30 and 70% for an ebook, depending on a few different factors.
So the most advantageous for you is to buy it directly from your website.
Correct.
Okay.
And
I'm looking at your website right now where.
Yeah, the Christian books are on Our Walk in Christ, because I write mostly Christian, and I do try and keep I try and keep the Christian stuff to a minimum on Switch to Linux, because it's not an entirely Christian audience. And I recognize that some people love it, some people hate it. And so I'll mention it. I try not to mention it more than once a month on Switch to Linux, but I do have a whole YouTube channel just doing Christian teaching called Our Walk in Christ, which was actually my first YouTube channel. But of course, with that content, Google doesn't like promoting that, so it's not very big. But ourwalkinchrist.com is actually my personal store. I have a publishing company called Our Walk in Christ Publishing, OWICPUB. That's technically the publisher. And I have a science fiction novel, which is at synaptergy.com. So I have a mishmash of different places that are all my own.
What's the topic on the science fiction novel?
It's actually based on a fictional story surrounding Neuralink, well before they really hit the market with anything. If you check the publication date, it was published very early to 2020, right when we were all being locked down. I published, Synaptology, and it's based on a kid who is in a major car accident, and he ends up getting a brain implant, and it turns out that there's some evil people who are controlling functions of his brain through the brain implant. And it's meant to be part of a series, and I will eventually get in write books 2 and 3. It's just right when that was published, we had the COVID stuff happen, and then I'm launching the publishing group, and then I built a van. So my entire van also built with my own hands, and that took a while. So it was.
So you're saying they gave him Google Brain?
They basically gave him Google Brain, yes. That is.
Is there an audiobook format?
There is an audiobook for that. Yeah. In fact,
you have to drop me the link for that.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and drop that in the YouTube chat here. So let's see.
YouTube chat doesn't like links outside of YouTube.
Okay. Well, I just dropped it. Let me know if it shows up. I see it there. I don't know if everybody else can see it there.
Nope.
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 I don't see it.
Okay. Let's do this.
Drop it in the show notes and check this out.
Yeah, there you go.
Here. Can you see synaptology.com? Yeah. So that one there, in fact, if you go down to the bottom of that web page there's actually a 5-minute preview on SoundCloud, so you can actually go and listen to the first 5 minutes. And
cool.
let me see if I can update the.
Now, the whole
Okay,
problem
I got
with
it, I
Google
got it.
Brain is you never know when they're going to cancel the project.
Correct. Looks like I can no longer edit the Google Docs, so for the show notes. But
Really?
yeah.
Well, I could use that Google Brain. At least I'd learn my ABCs.
Right.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay, so can you go
That was a
over
stock comment.
your writing process?
So like how I write a book, how I get it out.
Yeah, from start
Yeah,
to finish. Just
Sure. So there's 2 basic authoring philosophies. If you watch any AuthorTube videos and stuff, there's a whole hashtag for on YouTube if you want to hear about authoring. There's 2 basic philosophies. One is called the plotter, and the other is called a seeder. The plotter is he plots everything out to infinite detail and things like this, and the seeder just writes by the seat of his pants, like and then you got to figure out how to get your character out of the situation you inadvertently put him in. And so there's 2 different philosophies. For the most part, I'm a plotter, particularly. Most of my books are Christian living type stuff. I do a series of books looking at Old Testament kings and what can we learn from them. One of my books is on holidays. One of my books is on media entertainment. And to do any book like this, you got to start with the end in mind. You have to kind of know what you're trying to accomplish, and then you write things out in different sections. So what I do is I actually found the best books that I have start with paper and pencil. So I'll write down the topic, I'll write down a few organized notes, and then on paper, before I even go to a computer, as I will branch out, and I'll end up writing a series of essays on the topics, and those essays end up becoming the book chapters. So I'll start with the essays and write them all out, and then I'll start looking at them, and then if I need to make adjustments to how things are done, I go ahead and do this, do that, whatever else. And then once I get the essays written down, then we actually go to the computer, and then we start, I just type stuff out on a basic unedited document initially, unformatted document, I should say initially, get the draft out, do a few draft edits, and then I start doing the book formatting inside LibreOffice. That's about it. It's nothing super complicated, just notebooks. Science fiction, any type of fiction, a little bit different. You actually have to do character backgrounds. So I have details about every character in the book written down that may or may not even be in the book. I know where their birthdays are. I know where they grew up. I knew a lot of their motivations. I know a lot of their character attributes, so that as I'm writing about the characters, I don't do something that's out of context or whatever else.
Sort
because
of
there's
sort of a personal wiki for yourself, so that you can go and reference it and make sure that anything you do isn't outside the bounds of what the character is.
Correct. Yeah, and that's exactly what it is. Just to make sure that you don't introduce. That's the biggest source of introduced plot holes in fiction, is to make up your characters as you go. You want to start with your characters in mind. You want to know the important key details about their house. I actually knew the whole layout of the house the thing was set in, even though there's rooms that never get used. things like that. So you do a lot of that kind of stuff, just to the creative process to put everything together and figure out what to do with it, so yeah, I mean, that's kind of the process. Nothing super crazy.
Now, tell me about your van.
Sure. It's a ProMaster van, ProMaster 2500 high roof. So I decided in 2016. So I spent 18 years mentoring youth. And in 2016, I looked at it and said, well, I'd like to get out and see the country before I'm, too old to enjoy it. And so, I know a lot of people, you wait to retirement, and then at retirement, then you're like, all right, I'm going to leave now and go retire. And when that happens, you can't hike anymore. You can't walk. You can drive by and see something from your car window, and that's about it. So I knew I wanted to get out there and do that. So I started studying and planning this back in, I think it was around 2016, right around the time I started switch to Linux. And so I started putting together a lot of the elements. I had to have some core things. I had to be able to run computers. I had to have internet. I had to keep doing my work because I have a lot of clients in web design. I have the YouTube channels. I needed to make sure that I would have as minimal disruption to my life as that. So then with that end in mind, I said, let's figure out how to do this, spend 4 years and put together a system with experiments of tests. And that's what I ended up doing. And so some of my non-negotiables are I need a roof with a high roof van. I don't want a van where I'm going to be crunched down. I want to be able to stand up. That's good. I don't care how long or short it is, as long as I can stand up and do some basic things. So I started with that, and I just bought an empty metal cargo van, just a completely empty cargo van. And from there, I just, started putting together and assembling all the different components. I think I put about $9,000 in individual components in the van, in addition to the price of the van. Bought a bunch of stuff. I turned my entire kitchen into like a staging zone for a construction site. And then, I just started with insulating the floor, threw in a subfloor, threw in a floor, insulated the ceiling, threw in a sub-ceiling, threw in a ceiling, insulated the walls, threw in sub-walls, threw in main walls. And then it got to the point where how do you run all the power systems on the most efficient possible? Yeah. So I have a channel called Tux Traveler, TUX Traveler, where I cover a lot of the individual van build stuff. And basically I started with 200 amps of lithium ion under the LifePo configuration, which is the most it's the best current commercial available configuration. It has about a 10-year lifespan. I can get 5,000 cycles out of these things. So, even after the first year, there is zero degradation in my system so far. I'm running a 40 amp charge controller and 500 watts of solar on the roof, which, other than the depth of the winter, completely keeps things as charged as it possibly can. And so with that, that lithium battery, 200 amps of lithium, as long as you're wiring things right, will do a perfect job. So what I did is I looked at every device and basically put everything in here wired into DC configurations, except for my main computer. So my main gaming computer, which is my video production, really, that's the only thing that has to have AC power. So I have an inverter to give me 1500 watts of pure sine wave inverter, which is fine. This computer on idle runs about 100 watts. Can't idle it all day long. It'll eat the battery, but I can turn it on long enough to do a lot of work, turn it off, things like that. So everything else, nearly every device that we have is DC power anyway. We just have all of these AC to DC adapters running around. You look at your laptop, it plugs into your wall. It has a brick. That brick is a inverter. Is it called an inverter if it goes DC to AC? I don't know. It goes from the AC power, converts it to DC power, pushes it out. So I used some electrical tools and measured the output voltage of all of those. And then I just went online and I got a ton of buck converters, which convert from various amounts: 12 volt, to 19 volt, 12 volt, to 5 volt, 12 volt, to 8 volt, all these different things. And I just wired all these things directly into the batteries through fuse boxes, of course. And this allows
Barrel
me to
connectors, just
wire out.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if I move, let me see if I can move this monitor in way of the camera here, for example, and then refocus it. You'll actually see here on the back of this guy here, we have this plug right here. This is just wired directly into the batteries. Now this monitor is a 12 volt line. And so the 12 volt line, I can plug directly into the battery fused. Computers, 19 volt lines. Pretty much every laptop is 19 volt, if you boil it down. And so I got a buck converter to go from 12 volt to 19 volt. I plug that in down here, and then I got a series of adapters, which end up pulling into one of these guys here. Standard input. So I have a 12 volt adapter that pushes out as many amps, and I just plug in the appropriate head. This is Lenovo computers. This is newer Dell and HPs. This is older Dell and HPs. And I have about 20 or so more adapters for everything under the sun. These are just the 4 I use on a regular basis. I can literally charge and run a laptop computer off of my van batteries just with those adapters.
That is completely awesome.
Yeah, it's I have 10 computers built into the walls. 4 of them are Raspberry Pis. Is it 10? No, I have 10 computers in here. I think I have 5 of them built into the walls. 4 Raspberry Pis, 5 of them into the walls. 4 Raspberry Pis. I have a micro tower, and I have the big gaming PC, and pfSense. So that's next one.
Question then: what are the Pis running?
I was getting ready to ask the same thing.
All right, so let's start with the router. The router that I have is pfSense. That's a Fitlet PC. It's basically the same model. You used to be able to get the Mint box on. I'm not sure if they still sell the Mint box or not, but that runs a Fitlet router based on pfSense. So that is fed internet from a LX40 cellular modem. Same type of modem. It's a commercial modem you'd find in a ATM machine, for example. One of my clients actually sells those. I'm like, hey, this is the one I want. He's like, cool. So I buy from him. It's like $300. It was a pain to get set up. It only works with major carriers. I have not found any NVMO that supports it. So I have Verizon. I pay way too much money, and I have 150 gigabytes maximum, but it works really well. I'm on cellular, and I've been on cellular for a whole year. So that feeds into the pfSense. The pfSense outputs into a gigabit switch. I think it's a D-Link gigabit switch. I actually have an Ethernet port in my van's wall because I'm that big of a geek. From there, it feeds into one of the Raspberry Pis, runs a PHP server with ISP config. I use this if I am in an offline setting building websites for people without the internet. I can also use any other PHP-based or web server-based application that I might want for infrastructure. I can run it all on there. The next one runs Open Media Vault on a Raspberry Pi. I have a video on that on Switch to Linux, how to build that. That is my file server and my media shares. So I have 300-400 movies on there, several TV shows, all on there. Any of my devices can access that, and I can watch a movie on any device in the van. And then from there, I have one running the 4-letter K word that YouTube seems to ban every time you mention it. The Open Source Media Center. In fact, it's running Open Source Media Center. You can backtrack what the software package is. Every video I do about it gets completely demonetized.
I'm a big fan of that 4-letter one.
I know. I love it. It's absolutely amazing. But it runs that. So I generally don't run it in the summer. I run that if I'm in a low power setting to watch videos and stuff, because it takes a lot less power. The other one is actually my main web design work computer. It runs Manjaro, and I'm running Manjaro Plasma, but if I could do it again, I'd run Manjaro XFCE. So I do all of my work in web design and have done so for 18 months on a Raspberry Pi. So those are the computers in there. And then if I have my main custom built, I have my custom built Ryzen 5 PC in there, which I use for streaming. And I have it's a micro tower, Inspirion micro tower Dell, which is what I'm actually on right now. We're doing this video on this one right now, which is just a little tiny box tower. And it's basically just bungeed to the wall with bungee cords. So,
Yeah.
So that's basically the power and stuff like that.
And Tom, if I could ask you real quick, I subscribed to your channel pretty early on, not when you first started, but pretty early. And one of the ones that I enjoyed was the home cooking hacks. Is there any plans to do anything else with that channel right now? I still go back to that chili recipe all the time.
No, it's obviously, as you can tell, I have 4 active YouTube channels. And cooking was kind of the thing that I did to get away from the computers. So no. But if you follow Tux Traveler, I actually do a lot of micro scale cooking over there because a lot of people love the van life stuff. Sometimes it's simple things like which brand of pre-cooked rice is best. I've done that video. But I've also done things like making homemade French fries. I will have a video soon about making a I'm actually working on a book idea on micro scale cooking, which inspired by cooking in the small space of the van. I have books on how to make homemade cookies are over there. So I have more cooking stuff on Tux Traveler than I have on home cooking hacks. And that is an active playlist that will get added to on a regular basis. So a lot of the recipes that I built over the years will find their way on that eventually. So long as there is room for them. So I'll be doing a chicken curry soon. I might do a micro scale chili soon. Modified. It's not as good as that homemade one with real fresh ingredients, but it passes in the van. So,
all right, very cool.
So, in general, how do you like life on the road?
I love it. Here's your advantages. We are going to be seeing some rolling power outages this summer. I'm not going to experience them. I have not been on the grid in a long time. On the downside, gas is really expensive right now, and empty shelves in stores is a reality. And so, I would say right now it may not be the best time to be living on the road. I would encourage people to buy a plot of land that you can homestead, grow some of your own food, because those store shelves are going to get emptier and things are going to be more expensive. That is the ultimate plan down the road. I'm not going to be a lifer on the road. I'm going to get around. I'm going to see the country. I'm going to experience the things I want to experience. And then I'm going to come in, I'm going to sell the van and buy a plot of land and homestead it. Because that's what we should be working on, being as independent as we can, from the powers that be. And one of the things I'm learning in van life is I will be able to build my homestead off grid if need be. And how to make that work, which is, I think, one of the things we should be focusing on doing. But that being said, I've been in 28 states in the last year, and I am enjoying every bit of it.
That was going to be my next question. How often do you move around? Are you constantly moving? Do you spend a week in a place and then move?
Yeah, so I landed back in Pennsylvania in March, and I've been mostly in Pennsylvania for about since March. And a lot of that is I came into March. I needed to get the van inspected because Pennsylvania has inspections. I want to get the taxes done. And then I teach at that camp, which is in July. And I also go to the Writers Conference, which is in July, both of them close to central Pennsylvania. So I'm kind of here. And I'll be going down. I have 1 week here in State College. And then I'll be going back down to camp in Virginia again. And then after that, I'm making one short trip back up to State College, heading up to storage to do an exchange of some things that I picked up, some things that I don't need, and there's some things I put in storage that I do need for the next trip. And then I'm heading west again, middle August. So I'll be heading North Dakota, Montana, Idaho, Washington, Oregon, and then from there I haven't planned where I'm going yet. If Yosemite's fires are out, maybe I'll start going by Yosemite, but so yeah,
watch out for PGE areas. They always have fires.
Yeah, and you do your things logically. Let me tell you that I cannot tell you how many van life videos I've seen, or RV or videos where people drive themselves in the middle of Las Vegas in July and then they complain that they can't get enough electricity to run their air conditioners. You're on wheels. Don't go to Las Vegas in the summer. It's like boiling there in the air. Well, I was in Las Vegas in December. It was beautiful in December.
Yeah. It's like going to Phoenix in July. It's not going to happen. I'm not going.
Yeah, I was in Phoenix in January, and it was beautiful. It was perfect weather. It was shorts weather, maybe sweatpants in the early morning, late evening. It got just chilly enough for that. It wasn't overly hot, and it was beautiful. So that's what I've been doing. In the winter, you'll find me in the South. In the summer, you'll find me in the North. Right now, we've got a heat wave. I wish it wasn't in Pennsylvania right now, but got to go back to camp next in the week after next, and so I'm just kind of chilling out here for a week, and the heat wave is passing, so it's good.
Yeah, I'm not sure how far north you'd have to go to get out of the heat wave. Probably
Right now, not super far. I was up in
Okay.
Maine a month ago, and it was very nice up there. It was not hot. It was very hot in Pennsylvania then. It was very cool in Maine.
I think it's been triple digits here every day for like 3 weeks or something, or 4 weeks.
Well, you're down on the equator, Joe.
Well, it's not usually this bad.
I can't exactly recommend California right now, but September, October, if you get out this way, let us know.
I've got family in Nicaragua. Texas is nothing.
Well, I've been in places like Kuwait and Iraq, but the problem is that it's friggin' humid here.
Yep.
That's what I was going to say about Phoenix. The first time I went there, and it was in fact in July, at some point back in the 90s when I first started driving, I got in the truck in Texas, and I think that particular day it was in the 80s. And no, it was actually cooler than that. It was in the 60s. And then the next time I got out of the truck was in Phoenix, and it was 123, and you could feel the top of your head cooking. But it wasn't.
Yeah.
It's weird because it's not super.
Well, you could feel the top of your head cooking because.
Well, I had a
yum,
little
yum.
more head back then. Yeah, had a little more hair back then.
Funny thing about the Phoenix area is the way the mountains are configured there. They are isolated from a lot of interesting weather stuff.
Yeah.
So if you guys remember this winter when that polar front came through, yeah, I left Phoenix right before that happened. I didn't check the weather, and so I'm like, I just got to head out. I landed the place and a little bit to the east of Phoenix, and I'm like, let's check the weather. What? It's going to start snowing everywhere I'm going. Well, Phoenix was still going to be, 60s, 70s. The cold front went right around Phoenix. It never hit that. But I ended up I was going up to Roswell at the time because I had to go visit the space aliens and get the space aliens up there in the tinfoil hats. And so I went up there, and then I had one day, and then I started a nonstop 1,000-mile trip down to the Gulf Coast, end up in Freeport, Texas, where you can, in Freeport, Texas, Bryant Beach there, you can just drive your van out on the beach and stay there for 3 weeks without moving.
Where do you get good tinfoil? All I can ever find is aluminum. The aluminum doesn't block nothing.
Well, it will if you get the right stuff. I mean, I got my what I got Wegmans heavy duty. This stuff will block anything, so it's good for your head. Keep it nice and handy.
It helps to know what frequencies the aliens are using.
Lead foil works best, but that has other damaging effects. So
there are other damaging
hard on
effects.
the neck. Excellent. Well, what do you got planned for the future? Any
So for the future, I will be doing some announcements soon on Switch to Linux. We're going to do I'm not going to say a different direction. I'm going to say a refined direction. Channel viewership on Switch to Linux has declined. I don't know if that's because I'm on YouTube's naughty list, which is always a possibility, or if people aren't liking the content, or maybe there's just other good, compelling Linux creators out there, which there are. So we're going to be doing a few little changes in the future to hopefully maybe get back to the roots of what we're doing. And I haven't announced those to the patron supporters yet. So I'm going to hold off here on there. Just that announcement's coming. As far as the writing stuff, we're starting to do a little bit more. I just relaunched the Writing Done Right channel. I'm going to be doing a lot more with that kind of stuff and building up the like the ridership ends type things. And of course the travel channels, we're going to keep the travel channel going as long as I tarry in the van. And then, we'll close that one down when I'm done traveling. But for the meantime, you can follow along where I'm going in any of those places. And some people are like, put everything on one channel. I'm like, I don't want to do that because I have such diverse differences. You know, people who want to hear about travel maybe don't want to hear about Jesus. You want to hear about Linux, not God. You know, so I put all the different content on all the different channels, and I'm really just focusing on refining the points about what each of those channels are doing, to hopefully make it
Linux
more
is
compelling.
God.
Well, I mean, I would disagree with you there, but you know, it's good, but it's not quite that level. I mean,
And Linus Torvalds is his prophet.
all right.
I warned you, Tom.
That's fine. That's cool. We can joke about it. I just won't go to that level of joke just because of the nature of that pesky thing called blasphemy, you know.
I really struggled if I wanted to bring any of this up, but have you found that given the culture, this is a difficult thing to go into, given the culture in the content creator space that has sort of shifted against the evangelical way of thinking, have you noticed any friction directly towards you as a content creator that has been toxic one way or the other?
Oh
Do
boy,
you think
I'm not, yeah, not directly. It's possible, you know, it's possible that, you know, I bring up God every, you know, month or something, and that's why I have numbers going down, but I'm not even completely sure that's the case, because anytime I do a video like, let's do a tutorial on how to use Bible time on Switch to Linux, I get a ton of people like, I had no idea you knew Christian content, and are super excited. And so every time you talk about it, you get a bump on the Christian channel. I think that the polarization that we see, it's real, but it's polar. There are just as many people that flock to conservative as liberal. There's just as many people that flock to Christian as in atheism. There's just as many people that flock to each other direction. And we may not notice that as much because we tend to get shown the videos from YouTube that relate to the point of view that YouTube perceives, at least, that we have. And so
Yeah, we're in
Echo
our own
chamber
locked
effect.
closet. Yeah.
yeah, I've had very, very few people jump in and go, you just absolutely suck and I'm never watching you again. Most of the guys that are sick of it just unsubscribe and go away. You know, I think that the world isn't that nasty that they're just going to get out there and be like, you all suck. There's a few of them, but there's a
I've
few.
always found that, you know, the open source community is extremely inclusive on people's ideologies. Basically, if they don't agree with you, they just won't say anything about it, and they'll move on to another topic involving open source. So
yeah.
My opinions on spirituality might be completely different than yours, but it doesn't really matter because we do have this Venn diagram of things that we can talk about.
Yeah. I know there's at least one other big Linux YouTuber that at one point in time publicly didn't like me because I mentioned Christian stuff, and I said, so what? You know, I don't care. That's fine. It was kind of funny. I don't know. I'm not going to go any further than that, but it happens. It doesn't matter, you know.
Yeah, I was curious about that because you see, you know, I look at TikTok and things, not proud of it, but there you go, and you see this attitude that's out there, and then I think about the Linux community, and I've had, being an Arch user, I've been using Arch for a lot of years, and I've been on that Arch forum, and you get the full brunt of that community's ability to be toxic. And I've often wondered, for content creators on Linux that make no secret of the fact that their belief system is Christian and conservative, you know, if they've had some difficulty in recent times.
Yeah,
as a
I think
result of that.
depending on your sphere, you will get some pushback depending on where you're talking about. I mean, somebody like Matt Walsh gets a lot of pushback, being openly Catholic, being as that he's involved in the culture debate. I'm not I'm not really in the culture debate, as it were, on my channels. So if I were, I'd probably get a lot more negative pushback. But I'm not there. I try and walk this interesting line that I try and get a good tutorial out. I try and get good things out. Like Tux Traveler, I try to never talk politics at all, one way or the other. I will have passing references to religion. It's Wednesday, so I'm going to church today, and that's about it. But I try and keep that one completely neutral. I keep Writing Done Right mostly neutral. People know what type of books I write, but other than that, all of my content is very secular, in the sense that I'm just trying to teach you as a young author how to use free and open source software to get your work done. And I don't care what your work is.
Here comes something from left field. Is
Sure.
autism one of your topics at any point?
Generally, no.
Okay, that was short.
Why?
I feel like you were unprepared for that answer.
Well, as an ASPE myself, I sort of look at people and say, gee, I wonder if that person is ASPE. And do they think about that or work on that or whatever?
Yeah, I mean, I've seen some debate one way or the other. There's one really big content creator, probably top of the charts on most of the alternative tech, who oftentimes refers to people on the spectrum as just there because everyone told them they were there. And I sometimes wonder, is there truth to this or not? Knowing a lot of people on spectrums, I wonder, is it as deep and as real as sometimes the world says? But I'm just not going to get into the field. I don't care. In that respect. But yeah,
it's one of those things that's difficult to really gather your thoughts on if you don't have a direct if you don't have anything in your life that directly involves you in it, I suppose. But Tom, I feel like we could talk to you all day, but we can't.
Yeah,
So,
yes, we can. We've done longer shows than this.
I'm gonna run out of I'm gonna run out of disk space for Audacity.
I could come back another time, but I'm actually still, like, 2 weeks I've not gotten a lot of work done. It's like today's technically a work day. Gotten zero done.
Well, so, we sure appreciate your time. And we thank you for that. Real quick though, is there some places you want to send people, some stuff you want to plug?
Yeah, depending on what you like. I did mention, I mentioned I have 4 active YouTube channels. I'll just tell you real quick, like, I think all of them are cross-linked to all of the other ones. So if you land on one of them, I always try and make sure it's on the homepage for the video. Scroll down to the bottom, you'll find all the other channels. So if you like Linux, free and open source, and geeky and computer type stuff, go to Switch to Linux. If you like Christian work, Our Walk in Christ. If you want to see travel work, Tux Traveler. If you want to see writing work related to authorship and things like that, go to Writing Done Right. There's websites attached to most of those, which you can generally find on the videos for those particular channels. But that's kind of the place. And of course, there's social medias. I'm not as super active on social medias. I would like to do better at that. But if very least, you can subscribe to the various social medias. It tells you when a video goes live. So that's kind of all I'll say for that, because if I list them all, there's too many. That takes too much time.
Well, we're going to try to get links to all this stuff into the show notes here, at least to your different websites and then your YouTube pages and that. Did you have something, Josh?
Yeah, I just wanted to say I'm subscribed to all your channels, Tom, and like I said, I've been there for quite a while, and I think your production qualities come, leaps and bounds from the beginning, and you do a great job of, as you said, kind of segregating out everything. So it definitely caters to the audience that you're looking for. So if anyone's out there that hasn't subscribed to Tom, definitely go check out his videos. They're very instructional. I listened to Joe Collins first before I found you, and I found that was a very similar path with your teaching, and the way you reached out to kind of the new users and helping them, and with Linux and all that. So
Collins stuff is great. I like Joe Collins a lot.
Yeah. So excellent stuff, and really appreciate you coming on.
Well, thank you.
Thanks for being here, Tom.
Thank you. Thanks for inviting me.
All right. So moving on to vibrations from the ether.
Marker.
Sure did. Okay, so this is from Victor Belina. I apologize if that's not right. I do the best I can, folks. Greetings, mintCast. One of your podcasts, you mentioned being in need of a backup editor when your usual one is busy. To be fair, we don't have a usual one.
Yeah.
I'd like to help with that. I have experience with audio editing in Audacity, mostly music, and I'm sure I'd be able to accomplish what you need with your instructions. I'm located in the UTC plus 2-hour time zone, and I'd generally be free to do editing needed most workday afternoons / evenings. We will very likely get with you in the near future and talk to you about that.
I did reply and sent an email and asked Victor if they were on the Discord. I did not get a response to that. It might have ended up in their spam. I've had that happen before when sending from my mintCast email address. I don't know why.
Yeah, we've had a couple of other people ask to help out, and I don't know that we've gotten back to them.
Well, this is the only one I've seen, and I, asked if they were on the Discord. So, Victor, if you are on the Discord, ping one of us, any of us, preferably Bill or myself, and then we will get you set up. And if you want to be primary editor, we will make you primary editor, and you can do as many shows as you want.
Oh,
And I might need help and advice with editing my music.
yeah, because we need to establish a reliable method of getting this done, because it almost embarrasses us somehow, or sometimes, that we don't get the shows out as quickly as we should, and we don't even really know who's gonna edit the next show from one show to the next. So it's
we don't know who's
appreciate
editing this show.
Yeah. I mean, I did the last one.
I think it's going to be Josh.
Josh.
Oh yeah,
There
nothing
is
but good can come of that.
Lost him.
We lost him. Oh,
There he is.
we got him back.
Yep, still here.
We have in our, of course, if you was to become a regular editor, we will give you editor access to our Google Drive, and then if we eventually go to our Nextcloud server over here, I got a Nextcloud running on a Rock Pro 64 ready to go. We'll give you access to that too. There is detailed instructions with pictures
in the drive
outlining how exactly the show is, because it is somewhat arguably unnecessarily complicated, but it is what it is.
You'll also get access to the crew channels on Discord, so you'll get a bit more content from there, because we do have some nice discussions in there amongst us.
In fact, most of the action on our Discord is in the crew channels. Honestly, I mean, it is what it is. So yeah, we would love to bring some people on and move to a more reliable system of getting these shows done. So yeah, get with us on Discord, if you will, please. Moving on to check this out.
All right, the first one, and check this out, was posted by Norbert. It's ADW Customizer, and I'm not going to say a lot on it. I'm just going to say that it's a tool for customizing libadwaita applications and the ADW GTK theme. And if Norbert wants, on the next show, if he's able to get on, he can come in and give a proper description of it.
So basically what it looks like, I'm on the GitHub page right now. It looks like a way to directly manipulate libadwaita to change the colors because libadwaita represents a bit of a shift in the way theming is done on the GNOME desktop. And
Norbert is a big GNOME fan. So.
yeah, well, I mean, he's a Fedora guy, and if you use the flagship Fedora, of course, he's a GNOME guy. So yeah, it's worth a look. The link will be in the show notes for that. Moss, you got one on here.
Yeah, I've got Nala, which is an apt add-on, or it's not really a plugin or anything. It sort of replaces apt. I've seen a couple of really neat videos. I've linked one of them. I originally saw this on Chris Titus Tech's YouTube channel, and it looked like it was a really interesting way to get more out of apt without using apt. And the GitLab has been linked. I think, did you do that, Bill?
No.
Well, someone linked the GitLab, and I'm happy for that because I hate just linking YouTube videos. And that's about all I've seen. It looks really exciting, but I'm not the techie to be able to describe all of it.
Well, I was just going to ask. You said it completely replaces apt. Does it still use the sources list and then the apt repositories?
Well, that's the fun thing. It will even you can make it search for repos, and it will find the 3 fastest and link those permanently, and all of your downloads all of a sudden get that much faster.
Yeah, and that's worth a second look.
Yeah, I think it does simultaneous downloads too.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Pac-Man does that. I just
really looked cool, and I wish I knew enough to talk about it more.
So what do you got on here, Josh?
Pika Backup, which is a Flatpak application designed to save your personal data and does not support complete system recovery. So I thought this was maybe a good complementary to or application to Timeshift that we have on Mint, of course, that they've taken over now. And, if you just want something to back up your home folder, because Timeshift obviously does the system snapshots, but doesn't do home by default. You can make it do home, but I thought this looked like a good, simple tool written in GTK4. So if someone's looking for an easy way to maybe put their home on a USB drive, looks like this will do the trick.
And to be clear, Londoner just pinged us and mentioned that he is in fact the one that did that link.
We always are thankful for Londoner.
I don't know where we would be without Londoner. Yeah. He is our quiet. He's like the sniper up in the tower. You know what I'm saying? Nobody knows he's there until he takes out the enemy. If we miss something, Londoner is always there to find it for us. He's on it, man. We're thankful to have him. All right. Moving on to housekeeping and announcements. Thank you for listening to this episode of mintCast. If you see something you'd like to hear about, tell us. Email us at mintcast@mintcast.org. Join us live on YouTube. Post at the mintcast subreddit. Chat with us on Telegram, Discord, Facebook, or post directly at mintcast.org. Our next episode will be 2 p.m. U.S. Central Time on Sunday, August 7th, 2022. And there's a link in the show notes to get that converted to your time zone. Next live stream will be 2 p.m. U.S. Central Time on Saturday, July 30th, 2022. And there's a link in the show notes to get that converted to your time zone as well. For episode 392.5 only, the next live stream will be 2 p.m. U.S. Central Time on Saturday, August 13th, 2022. I'm sure I did that wrong. And there's also a link for that to get converted to your time zone. Live stream information is at mintcast.org/livestream. To wrap up, Tom, where can we find you at again?
Well, I have switched to Linux, primarily is on YouTube. We are also on Odyssey, Rumble, and BitChute. We also have Writing Done Right for those interested in writing, Our Walk in Christ for those interested in Christian living, and Talks Traveler for those interested in traveling. Those are all available on YouTube, and then you can find links to everything else on those.
Excellent. How about you, Joe?
Well, if you like the sounds of my voice, you can catch me on a couple other podcasts. I'm on the Linux Link Tech Show, which you can find at tllts.org. I'm on the Linux Lugcast, which is at linuxlugcast.com. You can send me an email, jb@mintcast.org, or there's a link in the show notes to buy me a coffee.
Great. How about you, Moss?
Well, if you like the sound of my voice, which hopefully I'll be back with teeth next episode, I'm on Full Circle Weekly News. Approximately once a month on Distro Hoppers Digest. You can email me at bardmoss@pm.me, and my other information can be found at itsmoss.com.
And if you want to email me, you can do that at bill@mintcast.org. I'm Bill_H on Discord. I'm at WCHauser3 on Twitter. WCHauser3 on Facebook as well. And also check out it says new podcast, but we've been around a few months now. 3 Fat Truckers, and the website for that is 3ftpodcast.org. Norbert couldn't be here with us today, but if you want to get a hold of him, you can email him at norbert@mintcast.org. How about you, Josh?
Yeah, you can email me at jt@mintcast.org. I'm Josh Thacker on Discord, and at metal_foss on Twitter.
Before we leave, we want to make sure to acknowledge some of the people who make Mintcast possible. Norbert and Tony H. for our audio editing, and whoever else.
Bill.
And Bill, and Londoner, and I've lost track. Well, it says Josh Lowe for the work on the website, Hobstar for our logo, Annette RD for our animated Discord logo, Londoner for our time syncs, me, I suppose, for hosting the Linode, which runs our website, archive.org for hosting our audio files, and the Linux Mint development team for the fine distro we love to talk about each fortnight.
Thanks,
Clem.
Clem.
Dun, 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 dun.
And that's a wrap.
Oh, yeah.
And hit stop. Do you know what to do with Audacity, Tom?
Yep.
Export to a FLAC, and then...
Yeah, I was just telling him that, but I didn't turn my mic on first. Yeah, we save things as a FLAC and then upload it to the directory. And you should have a link for that. And if not, I'm sure Bill or Joe can get it to you.
I sent you a link in email.
I believe I saw the link. I'm just trying to.
Was the folder created?
Yes.
All right.
Boy, I'm gonna have to change some settings on Audacity. I just got a warning about disk space.
Oh man, it's
big. Cool. Cinnamon does that though.
Yeah.
Yeah, hopefully I have disk space. Otherwise, you're getting an MP3.
This was a long show today.
We kept it under 3 hours. What do you mean long show? We've had 3.5 hours before.
Yeah, that's true.
I haven't stopped the stream yet. Thanks for joining us, everybody.